the special meeting of the Plan and Design Commission of the City of Highland Park for August 22nd, 2023. Mr. Fontaine, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Mantis.
Present.
Commissioner Buckman.
Present.
Commissioner Kirsch.
Present.
Commissioner Hecht.
Present.
Vice Chair Moore.
Present.
Chairman Hainsfurther.
Present.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
I do
you.
recognize Jackson Roberts,
Thank
Student
you, Ann.
Representative, and City Council Liaison, and Annette Littler.
Thank you. Sorry to cut you off. Before we start tonight's hearing, I'm curious, how many of you have either attended or watched a PDC meeting prior to tonight? Can you raise your hands? Thank you. That's quite a bit of you. Thanks. I want to just provide you a little bit of background for a couple of moments so you know what to expect tonight. Our process tends to be an iterative process. The PDC will try and work with the petitioner to bring forward the best possible plan to City Council regardless of our recommendation, so that the council can make what they believe is the best decision possible. That takes time, so please do not anticipate that this will be the only hearing on this petition before the Plan and Design Commission. Tonight and at future hearings, the meeting will be run as follows. The staff will introduce the petition and present their report, followed by PDC questions. The petitioner will present their case to the commission, followed again by PDC questions. Members of the public will then have the opportunity to address the Plan and Design Commission, and we may ask questions of you. It is likely, though, there will be no response until after public comment is completed. The PDC makes recommendations based on evidence as to whether the proposal meets or doesn't meet the standards enumerated in the zoning ordinance. Carl, can you put that up for a second? Just so you know, he'll put those up on the screen, I hope, eventually. Those are outlined in the zoning ordinance. If you are planning to address the PDC, framing your remarks in relation to these standards will have the greatest impact. Finally, this meeting, as per the rules of the commission, will end no later than 10:30 p.m. Excuse me. Thank you. That is our rules, and we enforce them consistently. You should know, however, that we will not take any action without giving everyone the opportunity to speak. So you will be heard. If we don't get to everyone this evening, we will begin the next meeting with the opportunity for public comment from anyone who has not had the opportunity to speak tonight. However, we will not allow a second bite at the apple until everyone has had the opportunity to speak. Please keep in mind when we get to public comment, and I will remind you again, that you have a 3-minute time limit for each member of the public to speak. So please don't repeat what others have said. We'll figure out a way. You'll see, I'll judge how many people really agree with a speaker at the appropriate time. So now that you understand what you can expect from us, let me tell you what the PDC expects from you. This is a public hearing, and we expect you to listen carefully and quietly. Do not interrupt speakers, either through shouting or other expressions of support or displeasure. Be respectful of each other, the petitioner, our staff who works very hard for us, and most importantly, the commission. We are volunteers, your neighbors, and possibly your friends. So before we start the official proceedings, I believe our Corporation Counsel, Marcus Martinez, wants to say just a couple of words.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. I note that there are approximately 3 or 4 members of the City Council present here tonight, and I've advised them that other than City Council member Littler, who serves as council liaison to the Plan and Design Commission, no city council member, including the mayor, should speak in consideration of the Open Meetings Act. The mayor has informed me that if and when this matter goes before the city council, she will allow all members of the public to have another opportunity to speak, and she will also provide her own comments and perspectives on this matter at that time. She will also invite other council members to do the same. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. One logistical note for you. First of all, there are some seats over on the sides. If you wouldn't mind taking a seat instead of standing, we would appreciate it. This screen is hard for our PDC, some of our PDC members to see, and it is important for them to be able to do that. So if you see them, particularly the folks to my right, get up and go and take a seat in the front, that is why that's happening. So I wanted to make sure you understood that. So with that, let's get down to business. Welcome to the special meeting of the Highland Park Plan and Design Commission. My name is Walter Hainsfurther. A quorum of the Plan and Design Commission being present, the members of the Plan and Design Commission will now introduce themselves for the record from my right.
Danny Mantis.
Barissa Bruckman.
Adam Hecht.
Karen Moore.
Steve Kirch.
And our student member, Jackson Roberts. The Plan and Design Commission is charged with hearing applications for rezonings, plan developments, and subdivisions under the zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations of the City of Highland Park. In all matters, we recommend to the City Council based upon the testimony presented to us in the hearing. We are required to decide cases within 45 days after receipt of the transcript. All testimony is under oath. Both applicants and others who wish to speak on a particular case should present specific evidence as to why a proposal meets or fails to meet the standards for the relief requested. For clarity of our record, only one person will speak at a time, and all questions will be directed through the chair. We ask that you make every effort not to be repetitive in your testimony. Finally, we will make every effort to adhere to the schedule prepared. For tonight's hearing, if additional time is needed on a matter, it will be continued until the next available agenda, which we will let you know when that is at the conclusion of tonight's meeting. With that, I open the floor for the staff to the Plan and Design Commission to read into the record proof of publication and ownership.
Proof of publication and ownership are available for viewing at the Offices of Community Development, 1150 Half Day Road in Highland Park. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Fontaine. First order of business, obviously, is to have our staff report. Mr. Burhop, will you be presenting this matter?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, you're recognized. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chair. My name is Carl Burhop. I am a senior planner with the City of Highland Park with the Planning Division for the Community Development Department. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. This is a personal record for how many people I've presented in front of. So this is for a preliminary planned development. The acronym for that is PUD. That stands for Planned Development. The request is for a preliminary PUD and then design review for the property 1700 Old Deerfield Road, which is commonly called the former Solo Cup site. The project summary. The applicant is proposing and requests to construct two buildings, one 183,300 square feet in size and the other 127,050 square feet in size. The applicant requests a total of 590 off-street parking spaces, a total of 46 exterior docks and 2 drive-in doors, with another 31 future proposed docks split between the two buildings for a total of 79, and other accessory changes to the site, including landscaping and exterior lighting changes. The proposed uses are, in summary, light manufacturing, processing, storage, wholesaling, and distribution operations, and limited commercial uses, which is the phrase the applicant used. That's the location of the site, approximately 28.61 acres. So considerations, so this is a planned development triggered by that section of code I have cited for both those reasons. One, because multiple principal buildings are being proposed. Two, and then if an applicant proposes 25,000 square feet or more of new floor area, in this case, both buildings are over that. So that is why this request is here today, at least for the planned development. That is what has triggered this, and that is why this is here. There are two considerations before the Plan and Design Commission. An SUP in the nature of a preliminary PUD, that just means a special use permit in the nature of a preliminary plan development. On that, the commission is making a recommendation. The commission is a recommendation body, and the city council will make the final decision on the preliminary plan development. And then this also triggers design review. The commission is the final decision maker on design review. Design review is for the principally the building and exterior changes, and essentially how it looks in the aesthetics. Modifications. The applicant has requested a modification from section 150.520 sub B regarding environmentally sensitive areas. I have a very quick slide on that coming up. The applicant is not seeking any yard, also setback. Yard and setback are sometimes used interchangeably. They are not seeking any required yard or setback relief, nor floor area ratio, nor open space, nor parking, nor building height, nor lot coverage modifications. Staff have not completed the review of the lighting plans. Well, actually, the case there is the applicant submitted revisions. You may have noted on the posting. The posting was updated. Older items that were previously posted had the letter A. The applicant submitted several items that were new. Those are with letter B. Staff have not completed the review of the lighting plans at this point in time. Correct. Correct. There are additional other items that were submitted, that were revised, that will still need other city department review. And I have a few slides on that as well, though I'll try to keep this brief. Neighborhood context. Put up an aerial of the closest properties. It's light industry zoning to the north, and broadly those are commercial uses. To the west, across the streets, the police department, that's zoned public activity for PA. To the southwest and the west, there's a substantial and large residential neighborhood with many single-family homes, including single-family homes that do directly abut the property to the south, as well as those homes that are across the street to the west and southwest. And then to the east, the property borders railroad right-of-way, and then there's additional commercial multi-tenant uses, zoned I as well. Site plan. The site plan is similar to what the commission reviewed back at the pre-application meeting in September 6th of last year. The site plan indicates the closest setbacks along the southwest and the south, which those are the property lines that abut the neighborhood in the residential area. As I was already stated, there's a facility to the north, a proposed facility to the south. That's the applicant's phrasing, proposed facility 1 and proposed facility 2. With those docks. Of course, these plans were online as well as the staff report. Renderings, height. So the applicant indicates a maximum height of 41 feet. In this zoning district, the zoning code allows a maximum of 45 feet as grade and height are further defined in the zoning code. It was a staff comment that the applicant will have to verify that height with the dimension elevation plan and a grading exhibit indicating that the height meets the requirement as defined in the code. The applicant indicated max height of 41 feet. Materials and colors. This was in the packet, and so I just have this slide in case the commission wants to go over it. The applicant has brought hard copy materials. My recommendation, Chair, would be that when the applicant gives their presentation, they be given the opportunity to explain their materials in more depth. Traffic study. So I will go over this very lightly. The traffic study was included in the packet, both their original one and then the one that they submitted that was revised. I do want to point out my last bullet point. So the most recent study that was submitted the city has not completed its third-party review of that. The city uses Civil Tech. Civil Tech performs a third-party review of traffic studies and analyses. And of course, my recommendation to my statement to the commission would be like that is still pending, and the city will complete that and have that available at a future meeting. These are clips from the applicant study indicating the flow of traffic. Again, these numbers were included in the staff report in the packet. I would, Chair, again, when the applicant is up here to give their presentation, there are questions in the staff report about the study that would also put to the commission to have the applicant respond to. Okay, stormwater and environmentally sensitive areas. For stormwater, the applicant, if this should move forward, they will need permits from the city for grading and drainage, and permits are required from the United States Army Corps of Engineers, that's the USACE, and the Lake County Stormwater Management Organization, the Lake County SMC. Again, that's if it moves forward, they would need those permits to verify they are meeting the stormwater requirements. The applicant did submit stormwater analysis that was in the packet. That was one of the exhibits. And then again, these materials were in the packet, and hopefully the audience is able to see this, but again, these are all online. The applicant does propose several encroachments into wetlands, and so that gets back just to the prior slide about the modification about encroachments into environmentally sensitive areas. Landscaping and lighting, relatively brief slide here. So there's no plant material number variations that are being requested. Based on what the applicant submitted in their revised landscaping plan, they are providing the number of trees and shrubs. They do depict the planting islands on the site plan and landscaping plans. There's a few more details to our city's landscaping code, and I do have more details in the staff report. There's three subsections for the vehicular use area, as well as the foundation plantings that are required and triggered. And the applicant does, again, they do meet those, the numbered required. Exterior lighting, so as previously stated, staff is still reviewing this. The applicant submitted revisions. I will just point out cursory review. The applicant was proposing 4,000 Kelvin color correlated temperature. That's the K in the CCT. The staff has always recommended 3,000 Kelvin CCT as the maximum for new exterior lighting. Planning comments, I have 2 slides. These were in the staff report. More specificity needed regarding specific uses that are proposed for this site. That was a comment twice in the report. I believe one to verify the off-street parking requirements are met. Based on what the applicant did submit, they do meet the requirement. They actually have more parking than what was required based on how they submitted for their calculations. But there will be more specificity needed for the uses that are proposed. Public benefit, the applicant has, well, as already stated, they have not requested any of the trigger points that would require a public benefit. So based on the submission, no public benefit is required for that subsection in code. Section 150.607, this was in the staff report. More information regarding compliance with performance standards, and that includes sound emission. I think I have another comment on that. That must be on the next slide. And I just talked about the off-street parking and more specificity needed to verify that that requirement is met. The design standards are met. The drive aisles, the widths and lengths of the parking spaces, those do meet the strict requirements of the code. And I had 3 additional comments in the staff report. One related to if a gate's going to be used and stacking requirements. And then there were 2 other comments in my report. The setbacks, which are also called required yards in our code, those are met. Floor area ratio, coverage, and open space. Those are not required or triggered by this development. The applicant did provide information related to FAR and coverage in their application materials. And then this is the last slide I have for planning comments. The applicant should address trash enclosures and removal. The applicant should address where mechanical equipment will be located if exterior on the roof and related screening and sound mitigation measurements. 9 heritage trees are proposed for removal. That would necessitate revision or a separate zoning board of appeals application for heritage tree removal. Applicant should provide hours of operation based on their traffic study. I believe they had 24 hours listed for where the trucks were going to be coming in and out, so they should provide specifically the hours of operation. Staff recommend a decorative sound mitigation barrier be installed between the buildings and the west property line outside the 100-foot buffer and the south property line outside the buffer area. Staff recommend that all truck traffic be limited to the northeast access road along the railroad tracks. The applicant had stated that would be the primary access route, and the commission can certainly consider such measures as conditions of approval as appropriate or as necessary. Staff would also suggest that special attention be paid to the site's design and layout, buffers, landscaping, and mitigation measures, both physical and operational in nature. And then finally, there was just a question on clarification on the traffic study and if it accounts for the future docks that are proposed. Again, I do want to point out the applicant did submit that revised traffic study, and that will be going out, and then the response is pending from the city's third-party reviewer. The standards of approval. I do have them if I can put them up.
Sure.
They go several pages, but I do have them if I need to put them up. They do go several pages, but they are primarily these 4 subsections, though these subsections do by reference cross into at least one other subsection and others as appropriate. The first one's about the construction of environmentally sensitive areas. The other one's about the site planning constraints and design standards. Those are both from Article 5 in the plan development section. Then there's the standards for Section 150.1404. That's for special use permits. And then there's the Article 2 design review. And the commission must consider all of these standards, and these standards must be met. General city comments, again, they were in full in the packet. I just tried to provide a brief summary here. City forestry, in general, the proposal would not be in alignment with Chapter 94 of Highland Park City Code. That is the tree code of the city's code. And forestry would not be in support of this development as proposed. And then again, I'll just reiterate the heritage tree issue that I pointed out on several slides earlier. Public Works and Civil Tech, again, well, I guess I've stated this several times, but the revisions are still under review. And then there was a comment I do want to point out about providing a parking lot to accommodate the lost spaces on Old Deerfield Road as part of the development. And I do believe in the applicant's revised plans, I believe they do propose a 15-space parking lot along the northwest part of their property, approximately opposite of the police department. And that would be on the revised plan that was just posted this past Friday. Fire department, again, has comments, just need for travel and turning radius for the city's largest vehicle. More information needed related to fire protection. And that is the standard closing slide. This is a plan development. Staff recommend the commission open the public hearing, hear presentation from staff and the applicant, consider the application, take public testimony, and when appropriate, direct staff to draft findings of fact as appropriate to be presented at a future hearing, continue the public hearing for additional information and consideration.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't know whether this is on or it's not on. Let's start with questions from the Plan and Design Commission, starting from my right. You're up.
So, Carl, thank you. First question, just in terms of our considerations and the 4 standards that you pointed out. There was the reference to our procedures, which require us to consider the city's master plan as it currently is, correct?
That is correct, by reference, yes.
And so in reviewing the master plan, I think there's several references to strategic plans that have been prepared by different, call them districts throughout the city. Those are on the city's website, so it's fair for us to consider those strategic plans in this particular hearing, right?
That's correct. As per that standard, it's sub H. I don't remember the sub number, but it's in Article 5 of the zoning code. I actually do have it on my attachment if I need to pull it up on the computer, but you are correct.
Fair enough. I just wanted to make sure that was within the purview. I think that's the only thing that I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Bruckman.
So my only question to you, Carl, thank you for this presentation, is, and I guess it would be more of if, for example, forestry, right as of now, would not approve as is, like you just had mentioned, is that something that they would come back to us with another recommendation, or how does that, I guess, procedurally work?
So, sorry. So two things there.
Yeah.
So there's the heritage trees, which there is no staff or administrative, well, I shouldn't say there's none. There's limited administrative approval for staff to approve the removal of heritage trees. If they're healthy heritage trees,
Yeah.
staff does not have the authority, as specifically stated in Chapter 94, to authorize the removal of the heritage trees. So for those heritage trees, if the applicant wants to remove one or more, that would have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And as this has been submitted and presented by the applicant in their materials, they're requesting, was the number 9? Right. Well, it was on my prior slide. The other question, though, about other trees, key and protected trees, those trees consistent to the specific requirements of Chapter 94, an applicant or a property owner may potentially remove those. They need permit. They have to submit a permit for that. There's a tree replacement requirement or some type of payment in lieu. But that there are administrative ways for property owners to remove key or protected trees. But they do have to be permitted, and forestry does have to review that and approve.
Okay, thank you. No other questions?
Commissioner Heck?
Actually, along those lines, has there been an application submitted with the ZBA?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's all that I have.
Thank you.
Vice Chair?
The question I have is regards to the traffic studies, and I know the traffic studies looked at all the intersections surrounding the area, but my concern was if there was a traffic study on the accidents that happen up at the Cloverleaf on Deerfield Road where it goes on and off to 41, and I know a number of people that I know have had accidents or near accidents up there. I am wondering if that data is available or can be found.
That is a question I would have to, well, one, first, I'd put that to the applicant, and two, any questions on the traffic study are questions that staff will specifically have to write down and also give to Civil Tech, our third-party reviewer, as appropriate to return with.
Carl, can I just back up that a little bit? Can you ask the police department for accident history at that point, right? That's really what you're looking for.
Right, because that's what's included in the traffic reports, is there's been accident histories given for the different intersections, but I don't see anything further out, and I don't see anything at the Cloverleaf, which is the area that I would be concerned about.
So please get with the police department and bring that back the next time we hear this. What else?
No more questions right now.
Commissioner Kirch?
Yeah, just two quick ones. Packet page 53, where we're doing the parking calculations, the loading, the parking and the loading requirements use different square footages for each of the buildings in the calculations in terms of use. I'm wondering if that's part of the code, or, I mean, why the building should be the same percentage of use for both of those, right?
Would you like me to respond to that, Chair?
Yes.
So, right,
He's
so.
asking you.
So one, again, as we say with all applications, put that to the applicant. My own review of that, my understanding is that the building was going to use multi-uses, multi-principal uses, and that also gets to the staff comment about more specificity with the applicant providing about the uses. So my understanding for that was that, if there was 30 or 40% warehouse, the applicant was using that square footage to get that parking calculation. And if it was 10% office space, they were using that parking calculation to get that. In my mind, as long as those are the proposed uses, that, in my mind, that would seem acceptable. Obviously, though, their final percentages will have to bear that out. And if they make changes, they would have to meet that. I will state that from a zoning code standpoint, based on what they submitted, they were actually overparked.
And then just back on the traffic again, I had a hard time reconciling the A's and the B's and the comments and the non-comments. So just for the next time, I would really like a one-sheeter that shows where the Civil Tech analysis remains in conflict with the developer's proposal.
Correct. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. Done my homework. one of the things on page 4 says that the applicant will be using the area on Old Deerfield Road where it intersects the railroad be the primary vehicular truck entrance and exit, and that they would prohibit trucks on Richfield. How would that be enforced?
Comment on that, Josh?
Would you ask the police when you talk to them
Chair.
to
Mr.
provide an idea?
Chair.
Yes?
I can speak
Thank
on
you.
that.
Thank you, Marcus.
So that would be an enforcement issue. The personnel from the city, whether that's police or someone tasked from community development, would be there to determine whether a citation would have to be written.
Would it be, if they violate that, Marcus, would it be considered a violation of a special use if this was, if that was a condition of the special use, and therefore they would either have to provide a positive remedy to it, or the special use could be revoked? Am I correct in thinking that?
Well, right. Revocation would be one of the possible
Right.
penalties here.
But they would have the opportunity to obviously correct the problem first, so. Okay, I appreciate that, Marcus, thank you. A couple of things that I would like to know, that I know you don't have the answer tonight, but I would like to have this, is the number of semis that were, and trucks that were accessed the Solo Cup property when it was operating, how frequent they were. How do other semis in this area, because I know Jewel, for instance, and I believe probably some of the other businesses in this district are serviced by semi trucks. I'd like to know what that traffic is and how frequent that is. One of the things that I got confused about is I think of Deerfield Road as a primarily east-west road, and it seems like somehow in this, that they're talking about South Deerfield Road, or southbound and northbound Deerfield Road, and I just don't quite know where that is, so they're going to have to explain that, obviously. It bends, I know. That's Old Deerfield Road. That's not Deerfield Road, right? Okay. Can you tell us, because I've seen a lot of people referring to this as a truck depot, and there are conflicting, I will say conflicting aspects of the use table, that they have a truck terminal versus, I think, a freight. I'm not, Joel, you can tell me what the correct verbiage is, but one is a conditional use and one is a permitted use, if I remember correct, or it may be one is a prohibitive use. What is the difference between those definitions?
Well, Chair, the truck terminal definition is up on the slide from
Thank you.
section 150.202. It's relatively short. I can read it aloud.
Sure, please.
Truck terminal, a gathering point of vehicles of the second division at which the contents thereof are distributed or combined or stored for a short period of time until distributed or combined. That type of land use is a C use, a conditional use in the I zoning district. And I should qualify my slide here. It says no specific land use identified, and it says hyphen I district uses are allowed. I district uses are allowed pursuant to following the correct code. So in this case, I uses are allowed as long as following the code is followed. In this instance, it's triggered the planned development. So I just want to point out that caveat for my slide.
And it is considered in this case that these are freight and parcel terminals, right? A general warehouse and storage facility, wholesale trade offices, and storage facilities and certain manufacturing, right? That's the interpretation that this use would fall in, correct?
Staff has asked the applicant for more specificity as to their proposed land uses.
All right, because I've heard the term truck depot used, and I did a
The
little
applicant is not
research,
indicating.
so I appreciate that. So getting to performance standards, we have performance standards in our ordinance that govern noise and I believe, discharges, those sorts of things that they would have to conform with, but I don't see anything in the way of air quality studies or noise studies as part of our packet. Is that something that, am I missing it, or is it just not there?
I'm not aware of a noise study in the packet. It was a staff comment that more information is needed for compliance.
Just making sure. One of the other staff comments was a question about a gated entrance. A gated entrance, I believe, during our pre-application meeting with the petitioner was requested because we specifically expressed concern about the hours of operation of this facility. I know that's one of your comments, so I'm assuming that's something that our petitioner will address when they get up here. However, I just want to make sure I say it for the record. It is within the purview of this commission to recommend restrictions in the hour of operation on a business that is looking for a special use, correct?
That's correct.
And we have done that in the past, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. I did a lot of reading, I'm sorry. Finally, I know that we talked about, or there's something in the Civil Tech report that talks about an auto turn exhibit showing maneuverability on the site. I didn't see that as part of the package, but I will admit that I didn't go through all the pages of the traffic report. I relied on the summaries. Did I miss that?
I didn't see it.
For the maneuvering?
Yeah, an auto turn that showed how
Fire
vehicles, fire truck, how the semis are maneuver the site, get in, get out, can they make the turn, those sorts of things. Is how are they going to access the docks? Normally, you would do, I would see an auto turn exhibit as part of that. I don't see it here. Right?
There was a comment from the fire department for the fire trucks.
Yeah.
For the.
Well, I would want to see it if it fits a fire truck, it'll fit pretty much any vehicle, I think.
For the semis themselves, to be honest with you, I'd have to sit down and double check.
Okay.
I'd have to go through their materials.
Okay, thank you. Finally, kind of, I think for me right now, well, a couple things. Let's go to design standards. Let me get to my right page here. I apologize. All right. Some of the design standards talk about context, right? They talk about not just connectivity, which I see there, but also they talk about the context of the area that this fits in. And I know this is an I district, but have you had any conversations with the petitioner about how this fits in with the context beyond his comment in his written proposal that says, well, we have adequate access to the site?
For what was the comment again, Chad?
I'm curious as to whether you had a conversation with him about how the buildings fit in the context of the area in which they're going to be sited. Other than, I know they've talked about, well, it adjoins an industrial use, but context tends to be size and scale as well, correct? And we have the ability to talk about that as part of the design standards, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I think that's enough for me right now. Jackson, did you want to add anything before we move on?
All of my initial questions were answered. The only thing I would add is that if you are trying to find those old, the volume of semi-trucks going down that area from like Jewel Osco or the Solo Cup factory, also try to figure out what roads and what traffic patterns they used.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
Excellent point, Jackson, as usual. All right, any other questions for staff before we turn it over to the petitioner? Seeing none. Yes, sir, why don't you have your team stand up and so I can swear them all in? Raise your right hands. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. When you come to the podium to present, to give testimony, please state your name, what your relationship is, in this case, to the petition, and please spell your last name for our note taker, and that would be appreciated. Go ahead.
Yeah, just waiting for
Okay.
Carl to pull up our presentation. I'll start, though. My name is Rich Clowder. I'm with the law firm of DLA Piper in Chicago. I want to ask everybody or thank everybody for their attendance here tonight. I want to invite the Plan Commission members to ask questions at any time during our presentation.
We'll let you go through the whole presentation.
Okay.
And then we'll ask questions.
What we thought we would do, just sort of for the sake of efficiency and time, is I'm going to present the whole presentation, but as you can see, we've got a whole complement of subject matter experts here, and their names and affiliations appear on this slide. So you're going to want to do an inevitably deeper dive on some issues than others, and so they're all here to answer those questions. We'll get through the sort of high-level presentation initially, and then we'll be happy to take your questions along the way. So I think everyone obviously is aware of the location at 1700 Old Deerfield Road. There may be some people in the audience, though, that may be less familiar with the history of the site, so we thought we'd spend a little bit of time on that. Solo Cup began operations at this location in around 1960. For nearly 50 years, they operated a manufacturing facility with hundreds of employees, 24/7 shifts, significant noise emissions, air quality effects, and environmental contamination. Solo Cup closed in approximately 2008, and the site was decommissioned thereafter and has been underutilized, and in fact, not utilized at all since that time. Before closing, Solo Cup consisted of one main building and a few smaller buildings that together consisted of about 310,000 square feet with 14 loading docks, 3 rail car doors, 2 drive-in doors, 600 employees, and 350 parking spaces. The site also included an active rail spur, and reports at the time were that there was significant noise and rampant underparking, with cars often parked on city streets, bridging onto neighboring properties, and it could be on occasion be characterized as a veritable free-for-all. As I noted, there were substantial and numerous environmental effects as a result of the operation of the facility. When our client purchased the property in 2012, they completed a massive and expensive site remediation that included the removal of hazardous materials, storage tanks, asbestos, and other site contaminants. This is our best effort to show you what the site looked like before and what sorts of remediation took place. Our strong goal is to return the property to being fully operational, generating millions of dollars of real estate taxes, hundreds of jobs, and state-of-the-art modern industrial buildings that comply both in terms of use and scale with existing zoning requirements. It should be noted that the plan you are about to see is fully compliant with the caveat about the forestry circumstance, which we will address later, is fully compliant with existing zoning and meets all standards. The property is located in the I or industrial district, and the city's review is triggered not by any rezoning request, but rather, as Carl noted, by a provision in the zoning code that requires plan development approvals for properties with buildings of 25,000 square feet or larger, or multiple buildings on the same site. It is therefore appropriate and incumbent on the city to review this project on that basis and on those criteria, not on the criteria associated with a more strict request for a change in zoning or other land use relief, which we are not seeking in this instance. This is just a summary of some of the remediation that Red Cup undertook when they acquired the site in April of 2012. And I summarized that earlier, but suffice it to say that by the end of their remediation, they were given a clean bill of health by the Illinois EPA in the form of a no further remediation letter. Again, this is our attempt to show you a version of what the Solo Cup facility looked like then and what it looks like now. Turning to the development plan itself. From the standpoint of scale and use, this proposal compares favorably with the Solo Cup operations. The square footage of our two proposed buildings is almost identical to that of the Solo Cup building. And while we have more loading spaces given the needs of modern industrial tenants and occupiers, we are providing far more parking, far more limited hours of operation, enhanced landscaping and buffering, and less impact on the neighborhood and neighborhood streets. The proposed development, as Carl noted briefly, would consist of two so-called spec light industrial buildings. The modern industrial user and occupier requires that buildings be delivered quickly, and it is far more the exception than the rule in the industrial asset class that buildings be constructed speculatively, and that leasing commitments and lease-up occur during, not prior to, construction commencing. You'll note that the loading spaces are inward-facing, truck entrance is limited to the northeast corner, landscape buffers on the south and west are introduced, and site and streetscape improvements to enhance flow and safety have been incorporated. This slide shows perspectives facing southeast and southwest of the proposed development. The overall landscape plan features a thoughtful, naturalistic design philosophy that respects the existing landscaping and introduces seasonal colors, detention ponds, with native grasses and canopy trees that that soften parking areas and roadways. Evergreen plantings are also introduced along Ridge and along the southern border. You'll see on this slide a summary of the total plantings provided, which is in excess of what's required. A word about community engagement. This project, as virtually every project in the city, has received significant public scrutiny and community engagement. You'll recall that a prior development proposal that included lower and medium density levels of residential housing failed, and the city did not favorably entertain a proposed rezoning to allow residential uses as part of that application. When the developer decided to pivot to a proposal that's compliant with local zoning as relates to use and scale, it began a robust process of community engagement. Following the pre-application meeting before the city last fall, the developer, through its legal and entitlements team, began a series of meetings with local stakeholders as noted here. These culminated in a community-wide meeting last month at the Highland Park Police Station. Important revisions to the proposal have since been made throughout based on community and staff input, and we believe the input from neighbors has made the project a far superior one. Throughout the community process, neighbors have identified a series of concerns, including traffic and circulation, parking, air quality and noise emissions, environmental impact, and concerns about the speculative nature of the development. Let's turn to each of those briefly in order. Traffic. With respect to traffic, the updated the updated site plan attempts to respond to much of what we heard from local stakeholders. The signal at Richfield and Old Deerfield Road has been eliminated at the request of local residents. Back-to-back left turn lanes have been introduced to allow for movements onto Richfield Avenue. Passenger vehicles only may use the access driveway, which was relocated further south at the city's request. Trucks will be required to use the north access road only, and the developer will post signs prohibiting truck traffic on Richfield and restricting the use of trucks relative to Old Deerfield Road. The developer will ensure compliance by requiring tenants and their vendors to use the access road exclusively for truck traffic, or to be deemed to be in default under their lease with the developer. The truck traffic is heaviest during non-peak hours, and every measure possible will be employed to divert traffic from nearby residential neighborhoods. If the city or local residents have ideas beyond those that we've brought or thought of, we would be very interested in hearing them and attempting to implement them. Finally, we propose the conversion of the diagonal parking spaces with which people will be familiar along Old Deerfield Road in front of the police station to parallel parking spaces. We believe this will enhance safety and will allow for the inclusion of left turn lanes for both southbound and northbound traffic at the intersection of Old Deerfield Road and Richfield. We've withdrawn, as I mentioned, the request for a traffic signal. In addition, the striped diagonal parking spaces in front of the police station have been converted to parallel spaces to provide required right-of-way to accommodate the dedicated left turn lanes. To compensate for the loss of these few spaces, the developer has proposed to provide 14 or 15 parking spaces on its property for use by members of the public, which results in a net increase in available parking spaces at this location. Just another, just to go back, I think I'm sorry that it's not, that some of the notes are not as visible. I tried to sort of narrate what appears on some of the images or some of the text in the slide. We can go back to that, of course, in more detail. We've also appreciated the fact that our impact is particularly acute on the owners of Bulldog Security and Carefree Comfort immediately to the north of our property. Their tenants have been using portions of the Solo Cup property due to capacity issues on their own properties for some time now, and we appreciate that the original site plan would have reclaimed those spaces for use by the Solo Cup property's tenants. Even though the property in question is owned by Solo Cup, we appreciate that this portion of the property has served these businesses for some time. To that end, we met several times with the owners of those two properties in an effort to reach an accommodation that would yield up to 40 permanent parking spaces for their long-term use and as many as 12 temporary spaces for use between now and when construction might commence. Joe and Steve have been particularly vocal about their concerns throughout the community input process, and we did our best to address their concerns in what we consider to be a fair, transparent, cordial, and professional way on market terms that we believe were favorable to them. We had thought we were progressing on an agreement that would allow them to use a portion of our property to fulfill their parking needs that we were willing to make available in recognition of their immediate proximity to property that has been inactive for many years. But those negotiations did not bear fruit, and they were suspended by them immediately prior to the community meeting that we had last month. Nevertheless, we hope to resume discussions in the event that this project proceeds with them and with others. In terms of emissions, we have commissioned emission studies on both air quality and noise emission issues. Our air quality expert is here tonight and can speak to this in more detail if you like, but we undertook a study to review the potential impacts on air quality from the proposed development. Pretty technical stuff here. He can help unpack it in more detail if there is interest on the part of the commission or members of the public. We looked at both on-site and off-site sources and effects, including building, natural gas-fired comfort heating combusting emissions for the building, the effects of idling on on-site at loading dock areas, and off-site conditions like passenger vehicles, traffic volume, emissions from surrounding traffic, and other data. Total concentrations for the various potential pollutants were benchmarked against National Ambient Air Quality Standards, or NAAQS, is the acronym, and the upshot is that it was determined that none of the pollutants exceed their NAAQS threshold limit. Again, there's far more detail than appears on this slide, and we'll make it available to the public upon request. The same sort of review is underway with respect to noise levels, but as of the date of this hearing, we did not have the results of the report to share, but we'll do so when available in the coming weeks. With respect to natural resources, we should first note that the property is currently enrolled in an Illinois Forest Management Plan, hence the manner in which the property is cordoned off as required by Illinois law to maintain project eligibility and the property tax benefits of enrollment in the program. Ultimately, if and when development proceeds, we will implement a tree preservation plan that will promote responsible land stewardship will reestablish the oak hickory remnant forest with native oaks and understory plantings, implement a tree protection plan, and preserve and enhance the 100-foot buffer along Ridge Road and along the southern portion of the property. Finally, we have sized parking capacity for something close to a worst-case scenario when it comes to traffic and parking capacity. There is substantial parking, and at no time will the parking requirements which correspond to the various permitted uses be exceeded. We are not seeking a zoning change, nor are we asking now for the city to approve any uses that are not already permitted in the I district. In other words, were we to identify a tenant in the future whose use falls into the category of conditional under the I district regulations, we acknowledge that we would require a conditional use and a new set of public hearings, but we are not requesting approval for those uses at this time. In any case, we strongly believe that the impact of these light industrial buildings will pale in comparison to the more impactful Solo Cup factory when it comes to issues like air quality, noise emissions, ambient light, traffic, parking, and the like. Finally, this project will create significant numbers of temporary construction jobs and permanent jobs. It will maintain landscape buffers and green space. It places no burden on local schools and parks and generates incremental annual property tax revenue of more than $1,500,000. It also can be expected to have a spillover effect by generating employees who will frequent local restaurants and commercial establishments and spend at least some of their disposable income in Highland Park. I'd like to thank you for your consideration. Our full complement of professionals, as I mentioned, is here tonight and can answer any questions you may have or probe more deeply into any issues on which you'd like more information or informed perspectives. I'd like to again thank members of the public for coming out, members of the Plan Commission for your engagement, members of staff for your hard work and engagement as well. And again, we're happy to take questions now or whenever
we're going to take
you
them
might
now.
prefer.
Thank you if you're done. Thank you. Let's start from my left this time with Commissioner Kirch.
Yeah, put me on the spot, that's
So,
good.
do you want to, you can pass and we can come back to you.
Well, I know that everybody's going to hit on a lot of these things, so I will try to, if someone will just flag me if I start going too long.
You're doing fine.
The first thing came to my mind when I saw this project was Bolingbrook. And I say that because in the early 90s, when I was doing commercial real estate coverage for the Tribune, I saw these kinds of warehouse distribution centers popping up all along the I-5 corridor. To me, this project looks like an interstate highway project, and I'm wondering what the thinking was that made you want to put this kind of project on a suburban infill site that has immense traffic pattern issues.
Hey, please, let us go through our questions. Please not any applause or shouting. Like I asked you in the beginning, you're only going to prolong this, and you're going to, at the end of the day, fewer people, because you're the last one on the docket, fewer people will be able to address us tonight. So please be respectful. Thank you.
Commissioner, the way I would answer that question is we obviously engaged a real estate broker and real estate advisory services to identify what they thought would be the highest and best use of the property. They identified this as a very attractive opportunity for light industrial. The property is zoned I, industrial, so there is a very limited range of uses that can be maintained here already, and we are obviously only requesting approval for currently permitted uses in the I district. So our project is zoning compliant. You may recall that a prior project that was residential was rejected by the city, so there is really only a limited number of...
Can I stop you there for a second?
Not before us.
Yeah.
Can I stop you there for a second?
Sure.
There was no petition brought to this Plan Commission for a residential development. What was brought to us, from what I understand is before my time on the commission, was for a pre-application meeting. That's all. That's as far as this went. So please be accurate. There was no residential petition brought to us You brought a pre-app, you got comments back, you chose not to submit for a public hearing, probably because of some of the comments, but that was the owner's choice. That was not, it was never rejected
fair point.
or acted on by the city.
Fair point. It was not well received. We can probably agree on that. But
I can't because I'm not familiar with it, but the bottom line is nothing was brought before us.
Mr.
We never
Chairman.
had the opportunity, Design Commission.
Mr. Chairman.
Never had the opportunity to work with you to make it something that would be well received, right? And certainly, I think you could tell by the neighbors being here, this isn't being well received either. That's enough. Please, please, please. Thank you.
So I note on packet page 557, the Cushman-Wakefield study, which showed negative absorption in this market, in the Lake County market since 2019, really, and rising vacancy rates, which, I mean, I'm not sure if we're reading the same study that you're so enthusiastic about this. Is this a single tenant or multi-tenant property?
well, it's two buildings, and obviously we'd be happy to have both buildings occupied by a single tenant, the same tenant. But it is, it by its nature is speculative development. So we would begin construction like is very common in the industrial asset class, and market the property for use by single or multiple tenants.
So who are the target tenants that you've identified?
The range of tenants in the use categories that are identified in the I-district, light industrial, warehousing, that sort of thing.
You must have a more specific idea than that.
What I would like to propose is we had hoped that the Cushman and Wakefield representative would be here tonight. He's got a health issue in his family, and he let us know at the last minute he'd not be able to be here. But for a future hearing, I will have him here, and he will be prepared to address you.
So you don't really know, and I guess it's going to be. I find it hard to deal with a special use permit when I'm not exactly clear on what the uses are going to be. So I think it would be very helpful if at some point soon we got a better idea. I can't believe that. I mean, you don't have any letters of intent or letters of interest, anything. I would just like some sort of idea. Who Anderson Windows? I mean, that's the first thing that came to my mind. They would truck in the windows from the factory, and then they would be closer to these houses that I see walk by every day that need new windows and have construction projects going on. Is that the sort of tenant we're talking about?
Why don't we get you a proposed roster of tenants that we would anticipate marketing it to, at least by
That would be good.
category? That might be helpful.
Okay. The traffic, that's, I don't want to get, everybody's going to ask about that. Mike, you're asking an awfully lot of a very dismal little access road. What are you going to do? I mean, there's already tenants along part of that road that have the parking that backs right up onto your road. So I assume you're going to improve that. What are you going to do about their parking? And how are you going to control the behavior of truckers?
I can try to call our traffic expert up to answer those questions if now would be the appropriate time to do that.
That would be fine.
Okay. Lou-Wei, do you mind?
That's what I want to do is get him up there. Shh, 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 shh. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
John Sheese, place of business at 905 Home in Oak Park, Illinois.
Excuse me, Mr. Cease. I believe you are not the
I am
traffic
not a
engineer.
traffic engineer.
So is the
Traffic-
traffic engineer here?
He is here.
Why don't we have him? Because we
I'm
want to have
only
questions
answering-
about traffic.
Mr. Chairman, I'm only answering the question about road improvements.
That's
And
fine.
That the road leading to Old Deerfield Road is planned to be improved.
Thank you. Folks, shh.
You talked about the tax benefits, but I read somewhere that you're proposing the creation of a tax increment financing districts district to pay for the public improvements. Is that true?
That's incorrect. We are
So-
within a TIF district, but we have not made a proposal for any public.
So that means the extra tax benefit that you're generating, at least for a certain portion of time, will not go to anybody, but the new roadways that are built to serve you. Is that correct?
We didn't create the TIF district. Our property is located within a TIF district. Our property would be generating increment for the benefit of the TIF district, but we are not asking for any of that money to be diverted to any roadway improvements that we might be anticipating.
That's exactly what it
I
says.
think that's exactly what your packet
I
says.
must have read the wrong thing.
Right here on packet page 35. The developer is requesting reimbursement for the cost of these improvements from the city of Highland Park through tax increment financing.
So the update on that would be, and that's, unfortunately, that's historical information that we didn't correct. But what I described as being the pivot to the elimination of the traffic signal and the conversion of the diagonal spaces to parallel spaces that creates more right-of-way, allows the developer to be able to create the extra left lane without having to acquire additional right-of-way. And it was the latter that would have prompted the TIF request, and that TIF request is not something that we're prepared to act on. So I apologize for not having corrected that previously.
And just make note that the heritage trees coming down, I don't think that's going to fly. I agree with the city forester, and if you have excess parking, then you obviously have room to save the heritage trees, which the forester believes should be saved. And I don't know if we can call it up, but if you look at the rendering on packet page 87, I just want anybody to look at that and tell me that those massive two buildings don't dwarf absolutely everything around them and are in character with the other light industrial all around you. So I'm just my 2 cents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to make you an honorary architect if you keep that up, Commissioner Kirch. Vice Chair Moore.
Okay, so I agree with Commissioner Kirch that we are I get that we are shoehorned into this tiny weird space, but at the same time, maybe we're asking for too much to go in there. But nevertheless, we will attempt to work together to create a project that works for everybody. So my questions are, I have a lot of traffic questions. I'm a numbers person. So I'm going to say here on packet page 4, at the very bottom, it says the applicant's table 6, which goes to, and I'm sorry, I don't have the packet page number because it was, packet page 340. That's a table 6 that indicates a total of 490 trips per day, 61 truck trips, and 429 passenger vehicle trips. In the very next sentence, it now says the applicant's estimated 24-hour truck trip generation is now 121 per day. So how did we get from 61 to 121 for both facilities? So maybe the 61 truck trips is for one of the facilities. I don't know. And then is that 121 trips for the 48 docks, or is that for the proposed potential 79 docks? In which case, if you do the math, if you have 79 docks, then you're maybe looking at 199 trips per day. Well, that's an awful lot. I also don't know that we're going to be doing a 24-hour thing. So if we assume that we're working 8 hours a day, now we've got 25 trucks an hour, which is about 1 every 2 minutes. That is a lot of trucks, in my opinion.
All right, so identify yourself, spell your last name.
No problem.
For the record.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Louie Abuna. Last name is spelled A-B-O-O-N-A. I'm a principal with KLOA, and we performed the traffic study, and we've been working with your city staff and your third-party consultant. The number of truck trips is, the way we have it is the 61 refers to one-way truck trips, so it's only in or out. The 121 or 122 would be the in and out. So that would be the two-way truck trips in and out of both facilities. So that's perhaps the interchangeable use of those numbers. But the number of two-way truck trips is the sum of the in and the out. So it would be about 122.
And is that based off of 48 docks or 79 docks?
That's really based on the size of the buildings. That's how we base the trip generation. Is there are trip rates that are developed for these type of buildings and these type of sizes, and it's reflective of the size of the building, the number of employees, the passenger vehicle trips, as well as the truck trips. So there is a relationship between size of the building and the truck docks, as part of these trip rates when they were developed.
I don't think that answers my question, but we'll move on. So then I have another question about on packet page 339, which is this table 6. And we're talking about, let's go to packet page 340, which talks about the estimated 24-hour truck trip generation. And this is saying, we've got one paragraph saying that we will not be using a lot of trucks during the peak hours, which it doesn't really define peak hours, but I think it's 8 to 9 in the morning and like 4 to 5 in the afternoon. But looking at this model on table 7A, it looks like there's actually a lot of trips between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. And in table 7B on page 341, we've got peak hours essentially between 9 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon, which, to me, that looks like school time, after school time, before school time, and on the way to work time. So I'm a little confused by the hours we're looking at and what you consider to be peak travel time.
The peak travel time is correct, what you mentioned. These are the peak hour of the street system traffic based on the counts that we conducted, which are 8 to 9 in the morning and 4 to 5 in the afternoon. And the two tables that you were referring to, again, you were correct in your interpretation. Really, there is truck activity, obviously, throughout the day. We're not suggesting that there are no truck activities during those peak hours. The only statement we're trying to make is that the peak activity of the trucks occurs outside the peak hour of the street system. So, for example, when you look at the hourly distribution of the truck traffic, at 8 a.m. Between the two buildings, there'll be a total of 9 truck trips in and out, whereas at 9 a.m., which is past the street system peak hour, that number goes up to 16 in and out. So that's really the intent of that statement, just to kind of indicate that there are truck activities throughout the day, but the peak truck activity for these type of facilities tend to occur outside the peak hours.
And are these truck trip generation tables, I think these are based on other facilities that have a similar footprint. Are you saying that your facility will have a similar use and footprint?
Again, that's the intent here. Given the speculative nature of these developments, and it's typical of any traffic studies that we do, we rely on the trip generation rates that are published in this industry and that everyone relies on and is acceptable in the traffic engineering. So that is reflective of the anticipated uses in terms of warehousing and light industrial.
Okay, thank you. We just discussed that you guys have 590 total spaces proposed versus the 496 that are required. Is there a reason for that? Because most of the time we have a petitioner come here, they're hoping to get out of providing parking spaces, and you have voluntarily provided more. So I'm wondering if you already have a tenant in mind that you know is going to need all these spaces. Can you answer any ideas there?
We really don't have any tenants in mind. We are trying to control for a worst case, heaviest parking scenario so that we can accommodate the more intensive parking users on the site without reference to having to turn somebody away because we're shy of capacity. so, or overcapacity. So it's a fair question, and not to, sort of offer anything up, but I would imagine that our landscape plan might look a little bit different if we knew that we were going to have a lower demand for parking on site than we will, but we had to sort of control for, from a parking standpoint, the worst case scenario. So it will be fluid, presumably, and we may be able to make more land available for open space or greenery, depending on the nature of the tenant mix in one or both of the buildings.
So then is it possible to land bank those parking spaces?
Conceivably, yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Let me see. I'd be curious to know, well, all right, never mind. We'll skip that question for now. Okay, then the other question I had, and this is on packet page 40, packet page 357, and packet page 340. So packet page 40 states that the proposed this is towards the bottom in the response. Additionally, the proposed development envisions the signalization of the Old Orchard Road and Richfield Road
Old
intersection.
Deerfield.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Old Deerfield. So according to the traffic study issued by KLOA, such signalization would cause traffic to be processed in a more efficient manner than under existing conditions. And that would make it easier to help I believe my understanding was that it was going to make it easier to handle the traffic further north at Old Deerfield and Skokie Valley Road. But if you go to packet page
Say 340.
357, sorry,
It's okay.
and 360, 357 says that it's recommended to maintain the existing always stop sign and to monitor traffic conditions. But if you go to 360, the provision of the traffic signal at the intersection of Old Deerfield Road with Richfield Avenue will create additional gaps in the northbound through traffic stream, allowing traffic to turn in and out of the north access road more efficiently. So the recommendation is confusing because I don't think a decision has been made, and we would like to see some kind of decision.
So as Mr. Klauder indicated in his presentation, early on in the process, we were looking at signalizing this intersection, and we felt that it provides the most efficient operations in terms of accommodating and addressing existing needs, because currently traffic, particularly in the evening, does back up going northbound on Old Deerfield Road, given the heavy volume of left turners going on to Richfield to get to Deerfield Road. However, as we got into this more deeply and further our discussions with city staff, with the third-party traffic consultant that the city has hired, as well as some of the comments that we heard at the community meeting, it became apparent that leaving the intersection as an always stop control with the improvements that we are recommending can at this point serve as the best solution to the traffic issues. As indicated in our revised traffic study that is in the packet, where it looked at the intersection as an always stop sign control, it does show a marked improvement to the level of service at the intersection and significant decreases in the delay. So what we're doing without a signal is definitely an enhancement to what's happening today, even with the addition of the traffic from our proposed development.
Okay.
But in the traffic study that we revised, we still make the point that the issue of the traffic signal could perhaps be revisited and be considered in the future after this development is completed, just to see if it's if what we are predicting is going to occur, or if there will still be a need for signalization at that time.
All right, so the final recommendation is to leave the stop sign in place, even if it impacts the ability of the trucks to pull out of the access road.
Well, again, the analysis that we did shows that the trucks will still be able to come out of the north access road, yes.
Okay. One thing that didn't really get covered in the discussion around all the intersections and the improvements made to the pedestrians is managing that intersection up at Old Deerfield Road and Old Skokie Valley Road, which is where the bike path comes out. So there's a bike path going north-south through there, and there's also a bike bridge a pedestrian bridge going across Highway 41 there. If you've ever been on that, it's a rather steep slope down right to the corner, and then you have to get across traffic that is coming off the highway, going onto the highway. It's already real difficult to manage. And with the increased amount of truck traffic, because it's all going to go through there, I'm wondering if there's a effort to make any kind of improvement for the bridge, improve the signaling there, improve something there to make it easier for pedestrians and bikers at that corner.
The intersection of Old Deerfield and Skokie Valley is under always stop control. And we looked at that intersection at least from a capacity standpoint and from the lane configuration standpoint, and the intersection is operating within acceptable standards. But we can certainly take a deeper look at the issue with the pedestrian and bicyclists in terms of how that interacts with the intersection.
All right, thank you. Looking to see if there's
Patience
any
with us,
questions.
because it's a fairly large packet,
It was
as
a
you can
large
see.
packet, and there was a lot of,
900 pages, yeah. And we did go through it, read it.
and I apologize, the packet page isn't here, but you,
Hold it up. So which
oh, well, actually, this one right here, this page you have here. There was a comment made that the middle left turn lane would have to be only 10 feet wide, and that would have to be approved by city council. I would have a concern there that is awfully narrow, and now that we've got so much more traffic going through there, that would be a safety problem, especially if there are any trucks, maybe not semis, but any other kind of truck coming through there. That was a concern I had.
You want to comment whether you believe the 10-foot is adequate for a semi-trailer? How wide is a semi-trailer?
Well, we don't anticipate any semis going through here.
But they
Again-
could.
I'm sorry?
But they could.
There's
Correct.
no reason for them to be here. They're not going to be directed from the site to exit onto Old Deerfield Road at this location. This is going to be a passenger-only access drive, and all the trucks will be directed to use the north access road by the railroad tracks.
Well, and that's true, but it could also be a fire truck coming through there. It could be a semi-truck going to a different facility, maybe not one of your trucks, a moving truck having somebody in the neighborhood. There could be a semi-truck going through there, and the 10-foot wide seems to be small for that.
It still can accommodate a semi. There are a lot of arterials that under jurisdiction of IDOT that have lanes that are 10 feet wide, so it's not uncommon.
Okay.
However, in this case, like I said, it's unlikely that semis will be here, but if they are traveling through this section, they are traveling at very low speed, and therefore, they can certainly be accommodated by the lane width.
Okay. On packet page 841, this was responses to the City of Highland Park plan comments. And number 2 states that the driveway entrance on Old Deerfield Road shall only be right in and right out. So I don't know how anybody who's working on who maybe lives on the east side of Highland Park or is coming from Highway 41 is going to enter the facility. Are they going to have to come up Ridge Road? You can't make a left turn onto Devonshire or onto Old Deerfield Road and come up that way. I don't understand how those people are going to get to the facility.
Well, our proposal is to have this driveway accommodate movements from all directions.
Okay, because it says here that it would be right in, right out.
I think that was that was a comment from Public Works, but working with the city's third-party traffic consultant, they were in agreement with the design of the driveway and that it should allow for movements. And that's why we've designed it with a left turn lane to accommodate the cars coming in from the north on Old Deerfield Road, and the driveway has two exiting lanes to allow for right and left turns.
Is there a possibility that the primary entrance could be on Richfield Road, that little north entrance that you that is mentioned as a secondary entrance?
I mean, from a site planning design, this is really the primary entrance. Richfield is an undersized road, with parking on it, and it could be very hard for two cars to pass each other at the same time.
Okay.
So that what we have on Richfield, it's a nice secondary, relief valve for the proposed development. But I think this access, as we designed it, should be the main access and can handle this additional traffic.
Okay. And lastly, so at the very end of our packet, like packet page 872 and 873, there was a listing of the notes from the public meeting that you held, and I'm glad that you did hold a neighborhood meeting. I'm sorry, you held a neighborhood meeting. But I'm surprised that it only resulted in a page and a half of comments. I'm wondering if something is missing, considering the meeting was like an hour and 45 minutes long.
We were asked to provide a summary. I don't think staff was able to be in attendance, so we provided a summary. And many of the comments were sort of along the same lines, so we sort of did a high-level executive summary and of comments that we heard time and time again. Not that they were ill-founded, but that there was some degree of repetition and concern about some of the same issues expressed differently.
Okay, I guess I didn't get that from the summary. That is the end of my comments.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Hecht.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can everybody hear me? A lot of what I was going to talk about has already been covered, but there's a few things I wanted to touch on that I didn't see in the packet. And again, 914 pages is a lot, so if I missed it, I apologize. But I do want to say first thing is, I think I'm the only one on the commission that was here for the pre-app for the residential development.
Yep.
I don't remember how many years ago it was. I do remember it. Just to comment on that, I don't think it was, I think it was not well received, not because of the proposed use, but, and I don't know that any of you individuals were involved at the time, I don't remember, but it didn't seem well thought out. We had asked a lot of questions that there was no answers for because nobody thought about it from the applicant side. And I always wondered, why, and I assume it was the same applicant because you've owned it for 11 years, why that never was considered and why nobody came back for that. I don't know that you're in a position to answer that.
It's not in front of us.
And it's not in front of us, but go with you'll see why my questions kind of relate back to how you determined that this is the highest and best use. Really, my first question is, you said the broker that you consulted is from Cushman and Wakefield, and unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. And yes, I'd second the request that this individual attend a subsequent meeting, because I think it's important to kind of look at what went into that analysis. Actually, can you identify? No one's said his name. Do we know?
It was in the report.
Was it in
Keith Puritz.
I'm sorry?
Keith Puritz. Puritz.
His report was in there.
Okay, so one of the things I also is concerning to me, and I live in this neighborhood. Not far are two elementary schools, another an NSSED facility that are close proximity to each other, not far from this property. Not to mention also the Westridge Park District facility. And one of the things you said is peak times are between 8 and 9 in the morning and 4 and 5 in the afternoon. 8 and 9 in the morning is the peak time for drop off at those three different school education facilities. And I'm wondering if there's been any thought put into how to address that so that trucks aren't blocking the way of school buses that are going to come right down Ridge Road, which is directly adjacent to this property, or even down Old Deerfield or any of the surrounding roads that are abutting this property. That's kind of my first one. If you want to address it, go ahead.
Sure. I think a part of that is one of the reasons is limiting the trucks to that access road along railroad tracks is to limit the amount of time and the distance they have to travel on Old Deerfield Road. So get them off Old Deerfield Road to Scobie Valley to 41, because that's where their primary destination is, or where they'll be coming from. So that's the reason we want to get them as far away from the residential area to the north, get them to 41 so they do not have to interact with any residential traffic, any school traffic. We have no intention of, obviously, trucks going down Ridge Road. There is already a weight limit on Ridge, so trucks are not allowed to go in that direction in any case. But we really wanted the trucks to use the minimal amount of time and distance on Old Deerfield Road to limit that impact.
Okay, and so the design of the, I guess, the site plan will reflect that trucks aren't coming out.
Absolutely.
To that side. Okay.
They will not use the main entrance of Old Deerfield Road. And as Rich said earlier, this is going to be baked in the leases with the tenants, that they are required to have their trucks abide by these restrictions.
Okay. Speaking of that, I know you said you had you could provide a list of target tenants. I don't know that I care about the specific tenants. I care about target uses. Yeah. And who, I mean, speaking of Target could lease space in here as a distribution center. I'm not suggesting that, but just to play on words there. What are your targeted uses for these spaces, and how many different I know you'd love to have one tenant lease the whole thing, but you have 75 so docks. How many different why am I drawing a blank?
How many different tenants do you expect?
Yeah, how many different tenants do you expect, and how many different, I guess we'll call them suites, within these buildings are, at least is your design calling for?
The only way I can answer that is it's sort of market dependent. I just don't know. I will have an expert here prepared to answer that question, though. It's a good question.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to some of the questions on the truck traffic. So if you're going to have all of these trucks that are going to go back on basically along the railroad tracks to exit over there, I don't think there's too much of an issue if you're getting southbound on 41. But northbound to going up and then trying to get onto Deerfield Road before you can get to that entrance ramp. Has there been any consideration on how that's going to work? It's not a great ramp up there in the first place. When I go up there, I'm looking like this to try to look down Deerfield Road to see if any cars are coming. I can't imagine doing that in a semi. Has there been any thought to doing anything with that ramp to make it easier for trucks to use it, or is that even possible? I don't know if that's been considered.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't look at redesigning the ramp. I mean, this is an interchange on a state highway, a Class 2 truck route. So these ramps and these interchanges have been designed with trucks in mind, accommodating trucks. Like I said, it's a Class 2, so it's supposed to be carrying trucks, and these interchanges are supposed to be servicing those trucks. So they are designed to accommodate those kind of truck traffic.
Well, yeah, I have my concerns about that. I'll take your word for it, but that strikes me as something that's going to be a major problem with traffic flows coming down Deerfield Road onto Central, coming around that bend, going over the overpass in 41, then with semis lined up trying to get on there as well, and being able to navigate that without causing accidents. I think that's something that needs to be addressed a little bit more than saying the road the road is designated as being able to handle it. The other piece related to that is if trucks may come in and out of this one entrance, what's to stop them from, I think it's Old Deerfield Road, from instead of taking a right to get down to 41, taking a left to go to Deerfield Road, to go westbound for whoever's, west into Deerfield and further.
by the way, as bad as the ramp is to head north on Deerfield Road, it's really hard to get west on Deerfield Road. I think when I come from the north and get off at Deerfield Road, I feel like I'm taking my life in my own hands because it's on the top of a raised area, and it's pretty much a blind entrance onto Deerfield Road from there.
And even going a bit further, I assume that, and then taking it the other way, trucks coming in have got to be able to navigate that as well. And how do you plan to restrict incoming traffic into this facility from any of its current entrances? But I guess, and this kind of goes back to, I need to see what your targeted uses are, because those trucks may not be controlled by the tenants. They may be third parties making deliveries. And how do you control where those trucks are going in and out when they're not your tenants?
Again, my understanding is that this would be all spelled out in the leases. So while you're correct, there will be some potentially third-party deliveries made. It's going to be a responsibility of the tenant to make sure that those trucks are following the truck paths that are prescribed to avoid going through, Richfield and Old Deerfield intersection, and they'll be all coming in from the north on Old Deerfield Road instead.
Well, you're the property owner, you're the landlord. The city isn't party to those leases, which I understand you don't have tenants yet, but this is, if this were to ever go anywhere, at least from my perspective, that would be a restriction in the special use, that trucks don't go in off of Richfield in front of Bluegrass, or by the Craftwood over there, that they're going all the way around. And again, I'm wondering how you control that from a land use perspective, not from a leasing perspective, because you don't have leases yet, and if somebody violates a lease, your remedy is to evict them. Which is, I'm sure, not what you want to do. Going a bit, okay, so, you mentioned an NFR, a no further remediation letter, which is from the Illinois EPA when there's a cleanup, and just for the audience so they understand it. I didn't see the NFR in the packet, and I'm wondering what conditions were a part of it.
It's about 7 years. Sorry. It's about 7 years old. I will find it and send it to you through staff.
Thank you. Mentioned, and I know the Solo Cup has left 15 years ago, and best I can tell from the reason why they left is that the facility became outdated. Now, I don't know what that means, and this is from news articles. But there's a mention of a rail spur at the time. What happened with that?
I said it's still there.
If it's still there, is there any plans to use it?
No plans to use it. I don't know if it's there or not. John, do you? It's there, but we could decommission it, yeah.
You need to go to the mic if you're going to talk, because people are watching online for this. And again, identify yourself.
John Shees. And yes, the rail spur is there. By all appearances, it's been abandoned since Solo Cup left. And there are no plans to use that for this facility.
Has there been any contact with the railroads? I think that Union Pacific owns that.
Yes.
Yeah.
About whether that could be removed or,
We can look into
If
that.
you could
There has
please
been-
silence your phones, please, thank you.
well, I think that's something that I'm guessing is going to concern the community if the increase in rail traffic and actually coming back to the trucks. I mean, there's still a railroad crossing right there, so.
Correct.
I don't know if there's been discussions with the railroad or any consideration given to how to, you know, whether the railroads, there's more trains going through each day than there was in 2008 and before, or how that's changed since then, and whether that'll impact the proposed use. Okay, and I think that's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bruckman?
Thank you, and most of the questions I had have been addressed. Just two quick comments/questions come to my mind. I think about more of the schools and public safety as a concern with like kids, and I know you addressed it, but when you did the traffic study, did you go, I guess, is there any comparison to an area of like this type of buildings in a different community near schools and children, and if there's been any accidents, issues, and what kind of plans are going to be put in place to make extra caution, especially early in the morning when the kids are going to school? That's one question I had. And then the next one is just more of a comment about the environmental concerns to the city and surrounding cities nearby us, and if you could maybe touch again on the air quality report. I know you said there was someone here, just to kind of go over it quickly for me. Thank you.
Sure, and while he's walking up here, on the first one,
Yeah.
I mean, I think our overall approach in terms of public safety has been to try to get the trucks out of the neighborhoods, off the streets as quickly as possible, and to reduce truck traffic to the extent possible at all times, but in particular, when it conflicts with, you know, peak hours and school peak hours. So we'll continue to study that. I think we owe you some information on that, because that is a compelling concern and one that I think is, requires a little bit more information. Now I've sufficiently stalled long enough to get Ken up here to talk about air quality, so go ahead. Don't be too wonky.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ken Kruzinski, K-R-U-S-Z-Y-N-S-K-I. I'm with Civil and Environmental Consultants, their office in Naperville, Illinois. We were commissioned to look at the impacts on air quality of the proposed project. In this case here, the proposed impact is on ground level ozone. So we looked at various precursors to ozone, which is particulate matter, both coarse and fine, and nitrogen oxides. And we looked at different sources that would cause these emissions, on-site sources such as comfort heating from the heating of the two buildings, from parking lots, from idling on site near the docks. We looked at off-site emissions, that's from the vehicle exhaust, both passenger vehicles and trucks, fugitive emissions from the pavement itself due to the traffic on the trucks, kicking up dust, kicking up road salt. We considered the local meteorological aspects. We got our 5-year weather data from Milwaukee Airport. We ran a model using AirMod. It's an EPA-sanctioned model to do air dispersion modeling from these sources on site. We looked at a distance about 5 kilometers around the site, about 2,600 receptors that are monitoring what the effects would be from these potential emissions. In our calculations or in our modeling, we use a conservative approach. For comfort heating, we basically assumed that comfort heating was running 24 hours a day for 6 months of the year. For vehicle traffic, we took the information from the traffic study. We used the peak. We compared peak AM and PM traffic volumes for both passengers, vehicles, and trucks. We used the peak value, and then for our 24-hour average, we used it for all 24 hours. You know, so and then we extend it out annually when we did our annual emissions. So we have a report. I understand you don't have the report yet, but it's more in detail, and I'm going to have to answer more questions if you have any.
Great, thank you. I don't have any more questions, thanks.
Commissioner Mantis?
Thank you. On that point of environmental, not to revisit the questions about end user, but how can we know exactly what the environmental impact will be and model that out without having some estimation of who the end user will be? Because if light manufacturing is a permitted use on the site, presumably there's going to be some emissions from that would have an environmental impact beyond just comfort, heating, and traffic emissions.
That's a good point. If a facility comes in and it's actually doing manufacturing, say, I'm speculating, extrusion or some type of process where they need process heating, they would have to then get a permit from the Illinois EPA for that equipment and subsequently prove that they're not causing significant emissions, and also provide a pollution control device to control those emissions.
But that would be additional emissions above and beyond what you're pointing out here, and that are beyond our purview to regulate or control, given that it's a permitted use, correct?
It could be. When they go for the permit from the Illinois EPA for their air construction permit and operating permit, they'll have to prove that no net emissions, and so they'll have to do emission controls on any type of sources that they have.
Okay. Going back to a point that Commissioner Heck brought up, it looked like in the pre-application from September of last year, there was a request for the market study, which we got from Cushman and Wakefield. In my mind, that looks like a study on the industrial market rather than a study on what the highest and best use is for the actual property. As I understand our zoning ordinances, industrial is pretty flexible in terms of what permitted uses could be. We're already triggering a PUD. So I'm curious what due diligence or research the applicant has done in order to actually assess this as being the highest and best use rather than some other use.
It's a good question. I can't answer tonight, but I will get you an answer to that through the same resource that we've promised to deliver previously.
The one other or a couple other comments that I had is it the intention at all to have staff present on premises to help control some of the traffic, or would it simply be the tenant staff that are there and the landlord would have no staff to control a gate or anything like that to make sure that vehicular traffic is conforming with what we're asking for?
Picking up on a question that was asked actually some time ago, we are going to have gates, I believe 3 gates at various locations to secure the site and so forth. We are certainly not going to rely on staff to police compliance with city ordinances. We will deploy extensive signage, weight limits, those sorts of things. Of course, we can all be a little bit cynical about, because we probably from time to time are guilty of ourselves, like doing something which might be a workaround from what the posted signage would otherwise require. And so expecting that of trucks, I understand, is asking a lot. That said, the way we're sizing the entrances, the way we're sort of diverting the traffic so that the trucks are really only coming in and out at one location, which is the northernmost portion of the site, we think is going to adequately do the job. But if there are other things that we need to do in terms of restricting it, further restricting it as part of a condition of the special use PUD approval, we're happy to entertain that. We've thrown out some ideas in the traffic study and here tonight, but if there are other ideas, including that CivTech here, your own third-party consultant might have, we're happy to incorporate them.
Thanks. All set.
The privilege of being the chair means I get to go last, and that means that my esteemed colleagues
Chair.
Yeah.
I have some questions.
Well, I was going to get to him
Oh,
after
you,
me.
you would like, you want to go
You-
before me?
No, you can go, Jackson.
I'll
I'll defer to you.
Sorry.
You always ask much better questions than I do.
Usually we save the best for last, so.
You
Chair Haynes sort of
usually
gets to
ask
go
better
last.
questions than I do, so you go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored. First thing on packet page 855, that is the forestry concerns. The forestry does express that quite a few of the number of species in your plant schedule are not in compliance with the accepted species for the city. Would you be able to bring those into compliance?
Larry?
And while you're going up there, please, all the audience, be of mind that this young man not only has read this entire packet, but he's done all of his homework before he ever got to that. He's really a great asset to this commission, and that you can applaud him.
Good evening. My name is Larry Jurczyk. I'm a landscape architect with the J&L Design Group.
Can you
Our
spell your
address,
last name for us?
sure. D as in David, Z as in zebra, I-U-R-D-Z-I-K.
Just how I would have spelled it.
And our address is at 1955 Raymond Drive in Northbrook. So I really appreciate the question. There were certain species that we used that were acceptable for meeting the general landscape requirements, but were not acceptable for some of the tree replacement requirements, but we'll make that change and that adjustment, so we'll comply.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Moving on with that, I do note right underneath those landscape plans, there's a screening concern, both for the visibility of the property, but also that applies to noise of the property. This isn't really an environmental landscape issue, but what I have an issue with is that we have semi-trucks coming into what is basically a 200-foot wide passageway with 40-foot walls on either side. And there's concerns that the noise is going to echo around, or it's going to build up in that passageway. And it can go in three directions. It can go up, which means it affects everywhere. It can go to the east, which affects the railroad, or it can go to the west and to the south, because there's the two buildings aren't perfectly parallel. One is one is to the northwest and one is to the southeast, meaning that it goes to the southwest, which is directly into residential property. So how do you make sure, this is both, I guess, a landscaping concern, but also just a general concern. How do we make sure that doesn't happen?
Do you want me to address it? I guess from a landscaping perspective, I can address it. I'm not a sound expert, so I can't comment on the direction. It sounds like you've done quite a bit of homework on the direction of sound travel. But we do have some challenges with screening. Let me take a step back. Ridge Road, we're providing at a minimum a 100-foot buffer. And when I say buffer, that consists of existing vegetation that's there today, and additional landscape material that we're providing.
Is that landscape material deciduous or is it evergreen?
It's a mixture. It is a mixture, and that's where I'm going with my point. So it's difficult, and it's going to be a challenge to plant evergreens underneath some of the canopies of some of these rather large oak trees, but we expect to do it. In certain areas, they're going to have to be field located with our contractor. Either myself or somebody else from my office will be directing where these evergreens can be planted. So if you look at our landscape plan very carefully, we're showing quite a few evergreens, probably 50 or 60 evergreens along Ridge Road. I can't say that that's going to be the exact location of where those evergreens are going to be planted, because again, we have to protect the root zone of the existing trees that we're saving. And that all goes back to our tree preservation plan. But so the height of those trees are going to be 8 to 10 feet in height. So in terms of screening or buffering noise, they will have some benefit, but I expect over time those evergreens will grow in with the existing buckthorn that's there along Ridge Road, with the existing oak trees and the hickories, and it will become a really nice screen. And to your second point of your question, I'm just not qualified to answer about the direction of the noise.
Yes, absolutely. I understand about that second point. Just to bounce off something you mentioned, there's buckthorn on this property, correct?
That is correct. Quite a bit.
Copious amount. So buckthorn is an invasive species, correct?
Correct.
So would you remove that buckthorn, or would you just leave it be? You would just allow that if
We
it's
are
invasive
leaving the
species?
buckthorn, but we are going to monitor it and
Okay.
maintain it.
Okay.
So it does not spread. And buckthorn, I've been dealing with buckthorn for many, many years. It provides, if you drive down Ridge Road today, which I did before a meeting, you can't see through that buckthorn, it's so dense. So in one regard, it is non-native, but in another regard, it's really beneficial to our site.
Okay. So since it is non-native, would you develop a plan that would phase out that buckthorn in favor for native plants in support of the native environment?
Probably not.
Probably not?
No,
Okay.
that would not be my recommendation.
Okay.
No. Some buckthorn has died, some of it. The serious drought that we were in earlier this year has caused a lot of harm to a lot of trees on that property, which is really unfortunate. But as Rich mentioned in our title slide, being good stewards, what does that mean? So we're going to do our best to maintain what's there, add to it, and then develop a maintenance plan for the future.
Perfect, thank you so much. That's all I have for you.
Okay.
I have a few more things, sorry.
Okay, go, Jackson. Floor
Sorry.
is yours, sir.
Bad phrasing. Just to take back up the school concerns from Commissioners Bruckman and Hecht. I was a student that went to one of those three schools, and I want to add a little bit of context to the makeup of those three schools. So there is one general school, which is Sherwood Elementary School. It is a general neighborhood school. And then the other two schools, one of them is a special education school, the NSSRA. The third one is the Red Oak Dual Language Academy. And those last two schools are feeder schools, basically. Red Oak is basically a public school feeder school for our dual language program. So what that means is that it pulls students all across the city. And many of those students do end up taking a bus to school. And many of those students, especially those from the northern parts, from Highwood, from Fort Sheridan, to get to school, what they do is they get on that bus, they make their way to 41, and when they get off 41, they either do it at Clavey or they do it at Deerfield Road. And that Deerfield Road intersection is also where we're going to have semis exiting. So what I'm concerned about is, let's say a semi exits and a bus exits right behind it. Both of these are large vehicles, so they do have to take some time to find a wide enough opening into Deerfield Road. And Deerfield Road is busy during peak hours, 8 to 9 and 4 to 5, like you said. So we have that semi idling for a few minutes, it pulls out. We have that bus idling for a few minutes, it pulls out. There may even be multiple semis. How do we ensure these buses make it to school on time to make sure that these kids aren't wasting their time sitting on a bus when they could be learning? And then, of course, again, the emissions problem of it. We have buses and semis just idling, waiting for a chance to get into the intersection and make their way to their destination.
Very good question. Again, from the standpoint of truck trip generation, the number that we cited, 61 in and 61 out, is occurring over several hours of the day. It's not all occurring at one particular hour. So when you look at that distribution and look at any particular hour, let's say, the 8 a.m. when we are anticipating a total of 9 trucks in and out, and look at the distribution from different directions, north on 41, south on 41, and start breaking it down into, that 1 hour, how many trucks per minute, the frequency of those trucks is very low. So you may have 1 or 2 additional trucks using that particular ramp of 41, either getting on or off. And that's about it over a 1 hour period. So it really would flow within what the character of that roadway is.
Yeah. Hopefully we can find a plan that will minimize that effect as much as possible.
Actually, sorry to interrupt, I wanted to comment on that. Both my sons went to Red Oak monolingual when it was a neighborhood school. That's relatively recently that it's changed to where Red Oak is a dual language drawing from the entire city. So that was not what's being described was not the case when Solo Cup was there. And, both my kids walked to school or I drove them the 3 blocks. Because that's what we do. But
Nobody walks in Highland Park.
Right. I just wanted to kind of add that for some context on that. The condition now is not the same as it was 15 years ago over there. And there are more buses. They do get held up at railroad crossings. They do get held up at traffic lights. And now we've got them not nobody at Red Oak, there was very little bus service at Red Oak when my kids were there, and they're actually not the, I mean, my oldest is 20, so the same address. Sherwood drew from the other side of Deerfield Road, I think it still does, but there still weren't as many buses then as there are now. So just to add that in context.
So can I ask both Jackson and you, I think what I hear you saying is we would like you to broaden your frame of reference for your traffic study and look at some of those other issues, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One last issue I was going to bring up along with schools and buses. I go to Highland Park High School. The school buses also use that exit to get on and off to go to like athletic games, field trips, basically anything that needs us to get onto 41 and head into the city. That's my last thing with traffic. The last thing I have to ask about is a bit of a math problem. So looking at the plan of your plan that you provided in the report, I counted there are 46 outside docks, and we keep saying this number 48. Does that mean 2 are indoor?
2 are drive-throughs.
2 are drive-through indoor?
It's done. Pam.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
It says 2 drive-in.
Oh, two drive-in? So,
That's what it says.
Yeah, that's, Chair,
Okay.
I can respond. That was in the applicant's materials.
Of 2 drive-in.
That was in the
doors. So it's
applicant's
48
materials,
docks,
yes.
Or 40,
It's the-
46 docks, 2 drive-through doors, right?
Yes, in the applicant's materials, right.
Right.
There are
Yes.
46 exterior docks.
I
but
just
2
wanted to verify that when we're getting those, that we're saying 48, that we're not assuming there are just 48 of them outside or 48 of them in whatever location, that there are 46 on the outside and 2 drive-in doors. That's it.
That's correct.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, I'm good.
Can I comment real
Sure,
quick?
absolutely.
You were talking about the amount of traffic, and in packet page 360, under the old Deerfield Road with Old Skokie Valley Road, which is where the trucks are getting on and off 41, it does say inspection of site-generated traffic volumes and the projected future traffic volumes indicate that the additional number of trucks anticipated at this intersection will be approximately 1 additional truck every 5 minutes during the peak hours.
Right. That's a lot. Okay, thank you.
So it's not 9 in an hour, it's more like 12 or more.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. As I started to say, the joy of being the chairman is you get to go last, which means my esteemed colleagues, particularly the one on the far left, has asked a lot of really good questions, and many of them that I had. So I have a couple of them, though, and I want to also, as the architect on the commission, I want to spend some time at that, too. One is, I heard, Rich, you say that that the hours of operation will be limited. What are the hours of operation?
It's a good question. Again, it's going to be tenant-driven. I believe,
Yeah,
hold on.
go on.
Can I just?
Yep.
I don't think it's unfair for the commission to recommend reasonable hour limitations on hours of operation. I know that there are lots of trucks that like to do deliveries. Sometimes it's a good thing when they're doing them off hours, but I also understand that there are local ordinances and local concerns having to do with everything from lighting to emissions to noise, et cetera. We will comply with all of those and accept reasonable limitations beyond even what the ordinance would require.
Thank you. You kind of raised something that I am really concerned about, and I'm going to give you hopefully a little direction as we go along, but the lack of specificity with all this is extremely troubling because you're asking for a very intense development. You're correct. This is a permitted use, but it's a far more intense use than what I would normally expect here. And that's what's driving a lot of this as well. So the more we can nail down, I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't be prepared to vote for this anytime soon without all that specificity being brought to us. I don't know how my other commissioners feel, but that's the way I'm looking at it, because you're asking us to take a leap of faith, and I'm just not there right now. So one of the other couple other things that you have in terms of standard. One of my concerns with the traffic study is when we look at 79 docks, not 46, I'm assuming that generates a lot more traffic, because why else would you need 79 docks? So what I want is, I want to see the worst possible case on your traffic study, based on 79 docks. The other thing I'm used to seeing in a traffic study is traffic is generated by the uses on the space. So for instance, I'll use a car wash because we had that in front of us recently, and I'm familiar with that use. A car wash is going to generate a lot more traffic than, say, an office building on the same lot with the same footprint. So the use, absolutely, in my mind, plays a role in the amount of traffic. The other questions I have regarding traffic is a couple things. First of all, I'm assuming whoever goes in there that there may be over-the-road trucks that are coming to provide things there. And if we limit the hours of operation and access to the site to, say, 9 o'clock at night, where do those trucks wait to get in when we tell you you can open at 6 in the morning? And likewise, what happens when those docks are full and they can't pull in? Where are they waiting, and where are they idling? And what aspects, what impact does that have on traffic, on air quality, on noise? Okay? Let's go to some of the architecture issues with me. First of all, I'd like to know, there's a standard in the code that says relationship and connection to adjoining. Oh, that's a different one. I'm sorry, my fault. But it basically talks about and I'm looking for it. I'm looking for a couple of them. One is the special use will serve the public convenience at the location of the subject property, or the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the special use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public safety, health, safety, morals, comfort, and general welfare. And I understand that you talk about access to the site. I think there's some questions as to whether that's agreed with. One of the things I would like to know is what happens to the intensity of use if you only have one building on the site that complies fully with the zoning ordinance and not looking for two. So I think I'm going to want your gentleman from Cushman to talk about that. The problem is there's too much stuff here. I know that here one of the standards is protection of public health, safety, and welfare. The uses and structures within the planned development shall be compatible with one another in that they are designed, located, and proposed to be operated so that that it will protect the public health, safety, and welfare. And then there's another one about context to the general site that I am having, quite honestly, such a big packet trying to have right here. The nature, location, and size of the buildings and structures involved with the establishment of the special use will not impede, substantially hinder, or discourage the development and or use of the adjacent land and buildings in accordance with the regulations of the zoning district in which they are located. The scale of these buildings are quite a bit larger, particularly in terms of height, than the surrounding buildings, which are also zoned I. So why do you need a 45-foot high building?
Well, I think the marketing of the spaces requires buildings that high.
I don't know that because I've seen no evidence that says you can't lease a lower building. And in fact, I would say that, and I know one of the gentlemen on your team offices in Northbrook, I believe in Sky Harbor. If you look in Sky Harbor, most of those buildings are lower. I think of a building where you have an office in front and a manufacturing facility in back, and those are often one-story buildings that are quite a bit lower. So I want you to really take a look at that, because I don't feel that this fits with the context of the area. I understand it's totally not use, related, but this has to do with the design review portion of this as well. Likewise, I don't think the materials you're using are particularly, I know why you're using them. That's pretty standard for warehouse buildings. This is an area that's completely surrounded by residential on 3 sides, really, or on 2 sides. That's pretty close. So I think that you need to really study as to what those materials are. I'd like to see brick a lot more than I'd like to see a giant precast painted wall. I'd like to see more fenestration so it looks more stylish. I don't want to see, bottom line is I don't want to see a speculative building. I don't think that's the standard that we have in Highland Park. So I think that you have to take a look at those things. I want to know everything you can tell me about the mechanical equipment, where it is in the building, how it's going to be screened if it's above site. I want to know, I want some more attention paid to the neighbors that are to the south and west. I want to see perspectives from their perspective as to what they're going to see brought to us. And I want to see it not in the summer. I want to see what it looks like in the dead of winter. Because while we have a lot of buckthorn in that area, I can tell you, because I have it behind my house, it's gone in the winter. And so they're going to get a clear shot of that, right? I want to know about the lighting and how you're going to control it. I'm going to want to see it off when the buildings are closed so that it has no impact on the neighbors. Let's see what else I've got. One of the things in your packet says that $100 million in additional revenue is going to be generated to the city. Today I see it grew to 1.5 million. I want to know how that was arrived at. I want to see calculations and proof that that's what we can expect when the building is vacant, not when it's occupied, because it's a different tax rate if it's a vacant building. A couple other things really quickly. Public benefit. One of the things that's required for a special use in a planned development is that you provide a public benefit. Your public benefit, according to you, is that we're developing this site and there's going to produce jobs, which I don't know whether those jobs will go to Highland Park residents or not. I think that, I can pretty much read what you wrote, I think, which is the proposed development will foster local economic development by creating essential additional warehouse space and then the roadway improvements. So that we're paying for, that we may be paying for.
Sorry, can I interrupt you a second?
Yes, sir.
Did I misread the packet that no public benefit is required here because of the zoning district?
Carl, did you say that?
Chair, that is correct. So for this
Why
type
is
of
that?
zoning district, public benefit is only required if certain modifications or variations are requested, and those are not being requested. So there is no public benefit
Much
required.
to my chagrin
Sorry.
as well.
I think, I apologize. That's something that I assumed it was a public benefit requirement, and that's shame on me. One of the things that was brought up during the pre-app is I asked a question whether this would be a potential last mile facility to somebody like Amazon. That obviously changes the traffic generation for this kind of site. I was told, no, it isn't. I'm assuming you would put that in writing and allow us to make a condition of that as part of a recommendation to approve, if we were so inclined to do that.
Affirmed, yes.
Okay. Not sure whether that's good or bad. And let me close by telling you what I want to hear from your real estate consultant. I appreciate that he studied Lake County. I don't think it's particularly germane to this discussion because Lake County is pretty big and we're at the far south end. I know that there is that on all states property, there's, I think, 1.5 million square feet of warehouse and industrial being built currently. I know that there is over 1 million square feet proposed for the Baxter property at Deerfield and Lake Cook, and between Deerfield Road, Lake Cook, and 294. I know that there is a building on the southeast corner of Lake Cook and 294 that has a lovely sign by Cushman and Wakefield that they have 500,000 square feet of space available. So I guess I really want to know, why do we need this? Because it sure seems to me like, there's going to be plenty of space like this in the general area of this community. And so, as far as I'm concerned, I need to see a real strong economic case as to why this building isn't going to sit empty and be a burden on our community instead of an asset for our community. With that, if anybody have anything else they wanted to ask, because I think I've done enough, and I want to take a 5-minute break if we can.
Chair, I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, Liaison Lidauer.
I just have one question.
Sure.
One of the things that this commission and the city does have.
You need to speak up, please.
One of the things that this commission and the council does have.
Really loud.
One of the things that this commission does have direct query over has to do with the summary of relief that is being requested, and that really has to do with the environmentally sensitive areas. My question is, in looking at the graphs and the stormwater management areas, what percentage of your buildings are going to be covering, or your parking spaces, or any of the things that are being developed, what percentage has to do with the environmentally sensitive areas that are under the jurisdiction of this commission?
And how will those areas be protected as well from any runoff?
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent question. Do you have your civil engineer here, or your wetlands expert who want to testify?
Our wetlands expert is not here tonight, but
All right.
our civil engineer.
Bring him next time.
We can bring him next time.
If you can answer the question about how the wetlands are going to be protected, sure, and addressed.
Good evening. I'm Brett Duffy with Spaceco. Last name is spelled D-U-F-F-Y, 9575 West Higgins Road in Rosemont, Illinois. There are several small isolated wetlands along the western side of the property that, as part of this development, will be impacted and mitigated for off-site. We'll also be providing stormwater management detention ponds in accordance with the Lake County Stormwater Management Ordinance. So there is a large wetland at the south end of the property that will be slightly impacted, but mostly left intact at the very south end.
Vice Chair, you had it.
Oh, I had two questions.
Was that good enough? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I had
Vice
just
Chair.
two quick questions for staff, actually. This is the first time we've done an air quality study, and this has obviously been done by the applicant. Do we have a third party or company that reviews those results, like we do for the traffic?
Mr. Chairman, we will seek third-party review on all technical reports as necessary as part of this review.
And then my last question is for the forestry department. I know they're not here, but I would like to see what they require regarding buckthorn, because I know they've been under a huge, making a huge effort to get rid of it in the city. So I'd like to hear what they have to say about that.
Carl, can you set a timer for 5 minutes, and we will take a 5-minute, and I mean 5-minute recess, so you can stretch and some of us can use the facilities. Thank you. Please take your seats. And as soon as Commissioner Hecht returns, we'll start public comment. But before we do that, I want to recognize Council Liaison Lidauer, who was on the Plan and Design Commission when the residential proposal had been brought to the commission. So Council Liaison Lidauer.
I just want to say for the record that at that time, the proposal was for a 5-story multiple dwelling. And what really became quite clear from both community comments and whatnot was that by taking it down to 4 stories and reducing the density, and that does not address the issue of whether that would work from a financial perspective for the developer, but the community was much happier with something that came in there that was more of a neighborly type of concept, but that was a lesser density. And that was the way we left it with the developer or the applicant at the time, and it never went any further. So just for the record.
Thank you. All right. First of all, I appreciate you staying with us and all your cooperation and your patience tonight. Obviously, I think you've got the gist that this is a very complex petition, and we're trying very hard to be fair to everybody, not only the petitioner, but the folks in the community. So with that, what I would like is, if you intend to give public testimony, if you could rise, that means addressing our commission, rise and raise your right hands, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you. All right, so here's how it's going to work. First of all, remember, you get 3 minutes. The staff has a timer. They will be timing it. Your timer will start as soon as you finish spelling your name. So I would highly suggest, there's no need to thank us. I appreciate that. But tell us what you want us to know. Try very hard to stick to facts and the standards that were shown in terms of whether or not this development meets those standards. Understand that we now have about an hour, and this will end at 10:30. If you do not have the opportunity to speak tonight, you will at the next meeting, and we will have you first. Also, we have received a number of written comments. They were part of the packet, those that were received before Friday, right, Carl? This is Friday was the cutoff? And then anything received subsequently was provided to the commission.
Yes, Chair, may I make a comment about the public comments, please? So yeah, there were, just for the record, there were additional comments that were received throughout this weekend, and I did send the updated public comments to the commission today, everything that had been received up to 2:30 p.m. I made those public comments available both to the applicant and to the commission, and they will be posted online in the next packet.
Thank you. And if you think of things in the interim, please send Carl an email with those comments. We will get them. We do read them, obviously. We do a lot of reading. And they are, they are valued and important to us. So I wanted to just get that out on the table. Please try very hard not to be repetitive. If, I think if somebody says something you agree with, if I see a little stirring, I might ask for a show of hands just to see who agrees with the statements that are made, so that maybe you don't have to get up and address the commission. So with that, there are 2 microphones. There is a microphone over there at that podium. There is a microphone over to my left, somewhere over there, right? What?
May I make another comment?
Sure, Carl.
I apologize. I've never had a meeting in this facility before. I moved that there, and I was told that would not work from a tech standpoint. So I moved that back over here.
So there are two of them on that side, right?
Well, there's a podium here.
There's a podium and there's another microphone behind it.
Correct, if needed for.
Right?
Correct.
So I want to use both microphones so that we can get as many public comments in the next 55 minutes as possible. So if you would start lining up, what I would like you to do is, when you get up there, please tell us that you've been sworn. Please give us your name, spell your last name. And then once that's completed, Carl will start your 3-minute timer. And if you will be cut off at 3 minutes, right? All right. So let's let these last few people get in line. Let the petitioner get back. And the petitioner will not respond, and likely we will not respond or comment, but we may ask you a question after you're done. All right. Yes, sir.
I have been sworn in. My name is Will Hendrick. I live on Winthrop Road. I came up with an articulate, beautiful speech that I was going to say, but now that I've seen your questions, you all did a fantastic job. I am very proud of the questions that everyone on this commission asked. So I'm going to pivot, and instead of reading my speech, I would like some follow-up questions that maybe you could help me get answered. There's a market study, but it's pretty wildly insufficient. It doesn't really talk about the other businesses in the area, and it does not talk about the residential values. There's lots of talk about emissions. The baseline of what they presented today is for the general population. Well, there are actually 4 elementary or younger schools within 2 miles of it. Those are sensitive receptors. And I think we need more information on the impact of those. And I'm glad to hear the city will also have a third party looking at it. I will also say, you all hammered home on this. All of this, every aspect of it, the traffic report, the emissions, all of it is far too speculative right now to even dive into anything. For example, we hammered on what will the use be. That's huge. Different uses mean different types of trucks. Different types of trucks have different types of emissions. There's a lot of unknowns. I will also just pull from my beautiful speech that I'm not reading. One thing that I did notice during my research. On the latest master plan, there is a subcommittee, and you can quibble over the word truck terminal, truck depot. The committee used the term truck terminal, so we will use that. And they said that this should be a prohibited use for the industrial zone in this area. I recommend that this commission follow what that subcommittee came to the conclusion on for the master plan. Thank you.
Please, you're taking away time from other people. Just for the record, the changes to the zoning is not what is in front of us tonight, nor could we possibly do that at this point. It would have to be a separate petition. Next.
I'm Sonny Cohen, C-O-H-E-N. I've been sworn in. The application materials are remarkably incomplete in addressing the impact of the proposed development on the Southwest Highland Park residential community, specifically incompletely addressing the Plan Development Standards Section 150.520, specifically environmental quality and responsible design, relationship and connection to the adjoining land, and perhaps most importantly, Special Use Standards Section 150.1404, that the operation of the special use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. Permit me to expand on this just for a moment. New research from the Environmental Defense Fund on U.S. warehouse proliferation provides a window into the burden of truck-related air pollution exposure experienced by people living in close proximity to warehouses. The report states, quote, exposure to air pollution from these trucks is linked to a range of health issues, including the risk of developing childhood asthma, heart disease, adverse birth outcomes, cognitive decline, and stroke, unquote. A separate report, Hassles of Noise at Truck Terminals, states, quote, active semi-truck terminal facilities generate a level of noise that can cause issues to arise for both the owners of the facility and surrounding residents. me. There are many noise sources contributing to the overall noise level, including forklifts, braking, gear shifting, and vehicle reverse beeps. While noise is never desirable, it can be especially problematic when the terminal is located near residential areas, resulting in noise complaints and potential legal action that threatens the operation. In a community where you can't even keep roosters in your backyard due to noise complaints, where the county state's attorney is suing the Department of Transportation due to rumble strips on US 41, exceeding noise limits, a noisy, health-threatening truck depot in the middle of a residential community represents a violation prima facie. With respect to the rights of the property owner, I am confident that the Plan and Design Commission and the City Council will apply existing laws and regulation to ensure that we residents of Southwest Highland Park are not thrown under the truck, and that your names will not be associated with our neighborhood degradation, loss of property value, and litigable health implications. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. Can we go to the second microphone? I want to start using both microphones. So somebody at the second one there?
This one here?
Yeah, that one there.
Yeah. Is this on?
Yes,
okay,
it
okay.
is.
My name is Joe Walano, W-A-L-A-N-O, and I don't have a prepared statement. I just wanted to point out that everybody's talking about the 121 or so trucks in and out every day. There are 500 proposed parking places, which if each parking place is used by one car per day, that's 1,000 cars in and out per day. They are not restricted to go east on Old Skokie. They can go any direction they want. They talk about school traffic impact, 1,000 cars a day, possibly. That's it.
So I want to use both mics, so I want to get two lines basically going. So come on up. There you
Hi,
go.
I'm Barbara Padgett, P-A-G-E-T. I live in Highland Park off of Ridge Road, and both of my kids live down the street, one off of Ridge and one on Ridge Road. You are industrial, and we are residential. We are 4 generations enjoying walking, jogging, all ages walking their dogs, walking with a cane walker, and in the scheme of life, being those who are wheeled. You're very focused on what is going on right by your proposal. But what about all of us that live all along Ridge Road? You will never be able to control the trucks. I know at the last meeting you said something about you were going to put something in the trucks so you can find out where they are. You don't own those trucks. You can't put anything in those trucks. So your vans are 35,000 pounds empty and up to 80,000 pounds filled. They come down 22. They can come down Lake Cook Road. They will converse with the truckers on 41. They will always do that. You will not be tracking them. They are independent trucks. If the drivers are told that 41 is jammed up, they will cut across Ridge Road. From Lake Cook, GPS tells them to go Skokie Boulevard to Clavey to Ridge. They'll pass 2 elementary schools, a nursery school, and the NSSED for special education. Can you just picture these vans with carpoolers, children walking with parents or friends in those vans? And if the vans turn south from 22, they encounter 2 narrow roads with just enough room for a car in each direction. There are very specific markings for bikers along with signs. This was a very important addition for our bikers from the Highland Park Council. I can't think of anything more dangerous for our bikers than these vans. Now let's say there are no vans. What about the additional 400, which is what they said at the last meeting? But we now know that is not true. It is way over 500. And as this man said, we're talking over 1,000 cars a day. They will definitely avoid 41, and there is no way of pulling them over. And there is no time of day when we don't have kids going to activities, whether it's sports at night, school in the morning. These kids go all day and night. I can tell you, I have a grandchild in high school. He is in sports every single night. 41, let's understand. It was 45 vans that you first came with, then it was 60 at the meeting, and now you're up to 77. And it's not 400 cars, we all know that. There's Chantilly on 41. How are those people supposed to get in and out of their area? How are we supposed to get to Highland Park to shop? You're going to send us to Deerfield to do our shopping? We've got to get kids to junior high school, to doctors, and our hospital. And how are the ambulances going to get to the hospital? This is just absolutely absurd. And you know what? You couldn't answer so many questions tonight, which leads me to believe that your true idea is to put this together and then you're going to sell it to Amazon.
Thank you, Ms. Katcher. Mike number two. Mike number two, back in the back, Mike.
My name is Bob Stanley, Stanley. I live in the Hibernia development along Ridge Road, northwest Highland Park. I was going to talk about traffic, and that's been fairly well covered, but just to touch on a couple other things. In the years I've lived in Hibernia, the traffic on Ridge has increased greatly, especially rush hour in the evening. It's now very common for traffic to be backed up from 22 all the way down to the Hibernia Ridge entrance. That's about 3/8 of a mile, and even farther south than that. I can't imagine that traffic won't get worse with these 500 cars. They won't all be coming the same way, but I could imagine that many will be coming from the north and west, and as has been said, would probably try to bypass 41 and come down Ridge and then Ridgefield. I want to talk a little bit about stormwater also. These are two huge flat-top warehouses that are being proposed and a heck of a lot of parking. That's all surface that is going to tend to shed rainwater. I know there are detention ponds proposed, but detention ponds can only hold so much, and I imagine that water will still be shed from the site that is not being shed from the site now. Some interesting things that I learned recently. One mature oak tree takes up about 100 gallons a day. So that's about 40,000 gallons a year. Just the 9 trees that are being proposed to be taken out, that's 340,000 or 360,000 gallons in a year, and that's just those 9 trees. There are a lot more trees being proposed to be taken out, a lot more open land that has been absorbing stormwater that is now going to be shedding stormwater to the Skokie River, which already floods. I think it's potentially threatening for the surrounding area and certainly for downstream communities. So thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
Last name is Needleman, Needlman. I've been sworn in, and that was a wonderful.
Your first name, sir?
Todd. And this gentleman gave me a wonderful segue into stormwater management. I'm just going to say many Highland Parkers are particularly sensitive with regard to stormwater management. Now, each member municipality throughout Lake County, which commits to the Watershed Development Ordinance, actually has its own respective enforcement officer. Now, the reason I mention that is because the detention retention exemption letter this developer is using is from 2013. And by this point, a couple of enforcement officers have come and gone before the one we have now. So this exemption redemption letter needs to be updated. That's my first comment. I'll also have a few questions after that. Comment 2. The exemption letter that this developer is using doesn't address downstream capacity as required in Article 502.03 of the Watershed Development Ordinance. And for those of you who don't know what that article is, I'll just briefly state it. All concentrated stormwater discharges must be conveyed into a maintainable outlet with adequate downstream stormwater capacity. It will not result in increased flood and drainage hazard. This development is they're discharging to the railroad ditch, which leads to a culvert that runs under the railroad and under Route 41 into the Skokie River. That's just a comment. Now, the third comment I have is the railroad culverts in themselves and the old IDOT culverts are historically problematic. They're undersized, and there are residential areas just adjacent to these culverts. Okay, those are my 3 comments. Now, these are my 3 questions. 1, are these drainage flooding issues, or are there flooding issues along Grove Avenue? I don't know the answer.
Yes.
Yes.
Please talk to the commission. Don't talk to each other.
Sorry, I couldn't help it. All right, so there is flooding on Grove.
Don't interrupt.
Adjacent to that very sensitive area where the culverts are. Question number 2, can the exemption letter this developer is using be updated to the current enforcement officer we now have now, instead of using a 2013 document? 3, has there been an adequate downstream capacity analysis for the downstream system the site is discharging to? That's very important for many Highland Parkers because potentially that is adding to a flooding risk, and that is a hazard. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nealman. I guess they're fixing the other one, so go
One
ahead.
mic down.
Okay, that one's down.
I've been sworn in. My name is David Mason. I live at 1717 Daffodil Court. I'm going to put a finer point on a couple of things that have been mentioned. I heard there were going to be 61 trucks inbound, 61 trucks outbound, yet there are going to be 79 potential bays, truck bays. Seems like 79 truck bays is an invitation for a lot more than 61 trucks inbound and outbound. Our chairperson mentioned that it might be wise to broaden the traffic study. I would be very interested on the potential impact on the intersections of 41 and Park Avenue West, 41 and Half Day, Deerfield and Waukegan. Those intersections are already pretty congested during the peak hours. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is the mic working, the back mic?
He was next.
Yeah, he was next. So I want, if that back mic is working, if number 2 is working, why don't you use that one, young man?
Because we have this.
Yeah, this was going with me.
No, the young gentleman behind you was in line before you. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, go ahead.
So go ahead. And your name and, I'm sorry, maybe you, a young person, I should say. Sorry.
Gentleman is.
Go on.
My name is Riley Lachlan. I've been sworn in.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Riley.
Since the trucks in traffic will be by a lot of our schools, will this mean we'll be in danger walking to school and bus stops? My school bus drives right by it on Old Deerfield Road. Will I be late to school or getting home if my bus gets stuck in this traffic? I'll add I'm okay being late to school, but my mom won't be happy.
I don't think your teachers would be too happy either. Very, very nice job, Riley. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So you made me follow that?
Yes, sir. If I had to follow Jackson, you have to follow
All
Riley.
My name is Kenneth Tatz. I am the person who created a roster of attendees at the last meeting held at the Highland Park Police Station regarding this project, and I've tried to keep people informed of developments.
Before you start, pause it for a second, Carl. Can you spell your last name, please, for us for the record?
T-A-T-Z.
Thank you. All right, Carl,
Okay.
start it.
Now, this is my diagram here.
Sure.
And it's not currently accurate because I didn't know about the back-to-back left turn lanes that are going to be...
You need to use the microphone. I'm sorry. Mr.
I understand,
Ted.
okay. In any case, there will be two back-to-back left turn lanes that I just spoke with Mr. Abuna just a little bit while ago, and he said he couldn't think of an example in the real world where those are so close together. And I challenge him to come up with one situation so we can look at it and examine how challenging it is for vehicles to get by each other and not have an accident waiting to happen. But I want to focus on something else specifically. The vehicles that are going to be turning into their facility will have to cross with vehicles that are heading northeast. And that is going to create a major delay. I think that is going to be the greatest contribution to congestion from the property. If we assume that they have to wait for a car going northwest to clear before they can make that left turn into their facility, I estimate it might take 20 seconds, and I think that's a pretty generous allocation. Now, if you multiply that by the 500 vehicles, 500 times 20 seconds is 10,000 seconds, and I will do the math for you. That's 2 hours and 40 minutes of turning. In other words, it's going to be quite congested for a very long period of time right in front of our police station. Okay, now, given that, I'm running out of time,
You got a minute?
this guarantees that police response times will be increased, and maybe critically. It should be noted that emergency vehicles carrying critically ill patients from the southwest side of Highland Park will have a difficult time getting to the Highland Park Hospital. Now, we all know that cities have experienced a surge in crime in recent years, and that includes our concern over active shooters and bank robberies and smash and grab flash mob robberies. Police time is critical in all those cases. We should be doing everything possible to minimize police response time, not create obstacles for our brave police officers. Accordingly, I would urge our city planners to reject these traffic-related requests and do not handicap Highland Park's finest, the men and women of our police force. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Pass. Please, young lady at mic number 2.
Thank you for the young. My name is Kimberly Laughlin, Loughlin. I have been sworn in.
Yep.
I was not intending to speak today, but I did wind up having some questions based on what we heard. I will add, I have been a lifelong resident living off of Richfield Road. My son is now a lifelong resident for himself living off of Richfield Road. I work from home. My livelihood is very dependent upon sound. As the council knows, I have a sound booth in my house and do sound design. So I have many concerns over what's being proposed. Some of the questions I came up with was in regards to the traffic study done. I was wondering if this was done during school hours and school days. They mentioned about environmental studies being done. Was this also during school days? During the neighborhood meeting, it was brought up to the proposal if there could be a noise study done. I know noise has been discussed. I didn't hear them mention that they were going to go forward with a noise study, but they mentioned it at the neighborhood meeting. They were going to consider it. A light study, we know that the gas station just down the street from this is required to turn their lights off at a certain time. Looking at the amount of lights they were proposing, that was a lot of light. I'd be wondering what would be happening with that. At the neighborhood meeting, it was brought up that they might ask for a variance for the needed extra water retention ponds, and people asked about mosquito abatement. They mentioned, oh, they'd get mosquito abatement. So there's a concern there. Highland Park, as I understand it, is trying to go more pesticide-free, so I'm concerned of how this meets the Go Green initiative. Another question that's been brought up is how much money would be added to the city. I am one of those people who happens to be a big chunk of Highland Park that goes to all 109 district schools. When I looked at the map for the district boundaries, Deer Ridge Industrial, which I believe this is actually all within the 109 boundaries. So I'm wondering if any of that portion of the money actually goes to the Deerfield schools then, for that matter. Other thing, obviously, is concern with my young son, as he brought up, is that walking and driving around our area is already very dangerous. I have been personally a witness to truck crashes at the stoplight by me, which is Richfield and Deerfield Road. I've had to stop and give witness. I personally have issues getting, as you said, off of 41 at the Deerfield Road exit going west there. You guys have just made all these improvements to the pedestrian bridge. That's where our young children go to ride bikes and get crossed over. Now this is going to be a much more thoroughfare for trucks. Right now, we've had so many pedestrian and cyclist fatalities in our area. We have so many trucks that drive, and I know they say it'll be up to the police department to stop people from going the wrong way, but we're going to be involving Deerfield in this as well, because some of those trucks might not go the way they're supposed to go. They're going to hit Deerfield Road Bridge, which is already a big concern. And to lead on to what my son said, he's on the bus for over 45 minutes right now. His bus route goes past Old West Deerfield Road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Microphone 1.
Microphone 1. Hello. Good evening. My name is James Loesch. I have been sworn in. My last name is spelled Loesch. Everyone's brought up some phenomenal points. Once again, I have a lot to talk about in terms of traffic. Before that, I'd just like to say that I'm invested in this city, okay? My great-grandfather founded the Highland Park Police Department. His son was a chief of police. Their portraits are still up in the Highland Park Police Department.
No, please, it's taking away his time.
No, it's okay, I can conclude. My father worked for the Park District for quite a long time. I went through the school district 112 and 113 school system. I'm a graduate of Sherwood Elementary School, class of 1995. Why am I here? My backyard is directly where you spoke, Mr. Chairman. My second floor bedroom looks directly at the Solo Cup property in the winter, okay? I can see through those trees onto that entire industrial lot. While Solo Cup was there, those freight trains came in and they unloaded there, and it was an absolute nightmare. Literally, I would wake up in the middle of the night because those trains would just back up one after one after one after another. And it was such a godsend when they left. Having something like this threaten that quality of life again is a very scary notion to me. In addition to that, a lot has been talked about South Ridge Road. A lot has been talked about North Ridge Road. South Ridge Road is extremely important, like everyone has mentioned, quite a few schools. With this increased traffic, just like we saw when there was construction on Ridge Road near West Ridge, when there is traffic rerouted through Barberry or through the Red Oak Circle with all those elementary schools, people are flying through those residential neighborhoods. When they try to cut through Barberry or Devonshire Park, coming from Deerfield Road, everyone knows that it's not a shortcut, okay? You can make it in the same amount of time. People who are unfamiliar with this area are not going to understand that. They will not treat this as a residential area like we would. Their children are not here, ours are, okay? They're not going to understand these additional 400, 500, I don't know how many we're talking about anymore. These additional employees are coming in from the west suburbs, from the from the south suburbs, from the north suburbs. They're all coming in from these different directions that are going to have to take these back roads when there is congestion, and there will be congestion. This little area on Richfield and Old Deerfield Road, if you put a stoplight there, that's going to back up all the way down Ridge Road. It's going to back up down Deerfield Road. You're going to have people trying to go through that jig jog, and they're going to get stopped. And you're going to have one hell of a time. My mother went through cancer treatment. If I have to drive her outside my car,
Thank you very much,
outside First Road,
Thank
it's
you.
going to be difficult. Okay.
Please, we have a half hour. I'd like to get through everybody have the opportunity to talk. Microphone 2.
Hi, Katie Casas, C-A-S-A-S, and I have been sworn in. I'm legit. We were talking about, again, I just need to drive this home for anybody who has seen the Deerfield Bridge get hit time after time after time. It has signs and it has blinking lights, and trucks still go there, so not really sure how much we're hoping for there in regulation of keeping trucks where they shouldn't be. We have some places that can't really speak for themselves, some species that can't speak for themselves that might be impacted. Our wetlands are great for local flora and fauna. No, I'll take it. And it does help filter and clean our water, but it also helps to keep our water in a place rather than flooding our houses. If we keep draining wetlands or paving over them, whether they're retention ponds or not, this helps. We're talking about natives. Native plantings really help with water retention. And guess what? I didn't have to water once this summer, my native plantings. So that also helps with not having to consider water usage. If we're going to have buckthorn up and it's going to create screening, there's a lot of great natives that can create screening that's not buckthorn. So I'm going to keep on harping on natives because every little bit of inch counts for our species around here that help make our world go round. So it's super duper important. Mr. T cut down 70 trees before he was stopped, and now we have much stricter tree laws. Right now, we're not necessarily talking about 70 trees, so not quantity, but we are talking about quality. We are based, our savannas, our local native savannas, our hickory and oak savannas. Ask me how I know. And if you think about it, an oak tree has about 2,300 species that can depend on it. that can live on it, and that's not even taking into consideration the fungi, bacteria, or microorganisms. A heritage tree is a nice little keystone there that you, it's a large individual tree. This is Wikipedia, thank you very much, that is considered irreplaceable. So let's think about that again. I know that I don't have to hopefully drive this home to a place like this, a community like this, of how important our trees are. But we're not talking about like a bunch of little trees. We're talking about really great trees. And if we're talking about replacing some of these trees, I certainly would hope that we would be replacing them with native plantings. We also were talking about air pollution. You need to put in terms that there's noise and light pollution. Air pollution is not the only type of pollution we will have, and it's not just detrimental to you, it is detrimental to the species that can't talk and can't tell you that that's not okay. I might have actually gone 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 1.
Debbie Hyman, Hymen, and I was sworn in. I will be brief. I'll start from my last comment regarding the wetlands, because Ms. Cassis really was beautifully spoken on the issue. More than a decade ago, possibly a decade and a half, there was a proposal to put a school in an area where there were significant amounts of wetlands, and there was an uproar in this community over that. That was not the only reason the schools were not built there. However, it was a big issue. It is still a big issue. It will always be a big issue. Second point, I saw the number of businesses that were spoken to privately. I would suggest that you speak to the employees of Enterprise Rent-A-Car, because I believe they would seriously disagree with the traffic study, because they frequently discuss how many almost accidents occur at the intersection of 41 and Skokie Boulevard over there, because that's where their cars exit and enter when they are renting them to people, and they just hope that their customers are not impacted by what goes on over there. And my third point is just a point of clarification. Well, actually, I would like to thank the commission. You asked us not to, but I learned a tremendous amount tonight, and I appreciate all the information that was given through your comments and questions. But just a point of clarification, it is no longer NSSED, it is True North 804, and I would love that to be written down somewhere and for the community to know. It's an amazing organization, our special ed cooperative, True North 804. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Yes, good evening. My name's Hillel Singer. I live in the west side, southwest side of Highland Park. I appreciate the work you've put in there as far as doing your research and the questions that you've asked. Is this thing off? Okay.
Yes, it's on.
Most of my points have been covered, so I have a couple of concerns that I just want to reiterate again. I'm concerned about the delayed response time by fire, police, and emergency medical technicians to critical emergency situations resulting from traffic congestion. I'm referring to today's memorandum from the City of Highland Park plan comments. And number 2, it says, the Public Works Department and the Police Department have concerns that additional traffic from the development will negatively impacting the response time of emergency vehicles exiting the police department parking facility and increase the amount of conflicts at the police station. My second point is, I understand, I might not be understanding it correctly, but I would assume that financial benefits of any proposed development are given, whether it's jobs or tax increases to the city are part of your considerations. And once again, I want to reiterate that at this point, there's nothing more than a speculative proposal for the site. No tenants listed currently. So any tax or job creation benefits, as were said tonight to the city, can't be quantified at this time. That said, what about the significant financial impact this development will have on existing businesses in the Briargate district? Shouldn't the city have a primary responsibility to support conditions
that ensure the viability of these existing businesses, many of which have been an integral part of this community life for 30, 40, and 50 years. And I would argue that any tax benefit to the city will be greatly outweighed by loss of tax revenue resulting from reduced business activity, or the very real possibility that many of these small businesses along the truck route and in the Briargate District will be forced to close. I know some of these owners are in the audience this evening, and they absolutely deserve strong consideration during the committee's deliberations. And finally, it's not much of a stretch to say that all these factors will negatively impact property values throughout the area. I'm hopeful that all stakeholders, including the owner, city council, park district, residents, can come together, exchange ideas, and find a way to develop this property that truly benefits the community and the owner. Thank you.
Thank you. Number two. Microphone, microphone number one, I'm sorry, that was next,
number
right?
one.
I lost track.
Oh, how exciting.
Microphone number one, I'm sorry.
Hi, I've been sworn in. I'm Lisa Radin, R-A-D like in dog, I-N. I live in Highland Park, just off of, near Devonshire Park. This developer is asking Highland Park to change road patterns to accommodate their goals without understanding the safety and public health concerns of not only Highland Park, but surrounding communities of Deerfield, Northbrook, Lake Forest, and potentially others. It has been reiterated throughout this study that the access road, which is only 100 feet from the freight railroad track, will be primarily used by trucks both entering and leaving the facility. And per what we discussed, on any given day, there could be 125 trucks going in and out 100 feet from the freight train. Old Deerfield Road at the tracks is a 2-lane road which cannot be changed unless the railroad will make that change. A semi-truck is 72 feet long and without a trailer, 54 feet long. 1, 2, 3, or more trucks can be near the tracks in both directions waiting to enter the industrial park. On page 3 of the KLOA report, it states, quote, North Access Road will remain flexible and adequate access system. To be honest with you, I think we all need more than adequate. This potential jam at the access road is significant and it's dangerous. One small mistake can derail a train. The right-hand turn onto Old Deerfield Road is sharp from the access road. It is a known fact that semis need more room to turn given both their length and their wheel systems. They often use an oncoming lane to complete a turn. This maneuvering will occur both close to the tracks, maybe even on the tracks, and potentially create an accident. This would not be a fender bender, but perhaps a mass impact that could derail a train, causing catastrophic results, not only for Highland Park, but all the surrounding communities. The U.S. Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway Administration, the National Safety Council recently created a program called Safe Systems with the goal of 0 deaths due to transportation. Their report states, quote, the safe system approach assumes that people will occasionally.
Thank you very much. Microphone number 2.
My name is Michael Tarnoff. That's spelled T like Tom, A-R-N-O-F-F. I live on Barberry Road, a little bit to the south of the proposed development.
And you've been sworn,
I had a PowerPoint, which I see Mr. Burhop is getting ready to put up on the screen, but all of my points in the PowerPoint, most of my points in the PowerPoint have been covered, so I'm going to stick to just making some remarks. And thank you, you do not need to put the PowerPoint up. First, it was mentioned very briefly, noise pollution and air pollution, but we haven't seen any studies on either of those. I certainly hope that the petitioner will be required to provide studies on both noise and air pollution. Second, we've been talking about widening Old Deerfield Road, but I'm not sure where the land would come from to widen Old Deerfield Road unless there's a plan to use eminent domain to take away property from certain property owners on Old Deerfield Road in order to make space to widen Deerfield Road for this proposed project. And I would imagine property owners on Old Deerfield Road would have serious problems with that. Third, the traffic report says 980 vehicles per day, but the truck docks of 46 current truck stocks before they build to full capacity assumes if there's going to be 61 trucks per day, that's a turnover of, if you do the math, it's 1.3 times. But the International Warehouse Logistical Association estimates that in facilities of this nature, the truck turnover is about 5 times a day. That's 4 times, almost 4 times as much traffic as is indicated in the traffic study. That would mean instead of 61 trucks a day, if you multiply by 4, talking about 240 in and out, 120 in, 120 out. And I would assume if the truck traffic increases by 4, at least some portion of the other traffic will also increase because whatever the trucks leave in the warehouse eventually has to come out of the warehouse. So we could really, if you do that down to per minute, if you get to somewhere between around 2,000 vehicles per day, using the International Warehouse Logistical Association numbers, that's 1 in or out from a vehicle, not necessarily a truck, every 40 seconds, all day long, 24 hours a day. And finally, just to sum up, Mr. Walter Hainsfurther posted a statement on the Highland Park Highwood Planning Our Future page that said the property owner has an absolute right to develop the property within the requirements of the zoning ordinance, just like you do with your home. And then he added, but if you need relief from the ordinance, then it doesn't really meet all of the aspects of the ordinance, does it? That's my point. And that's my point too. That's my point too. It doesn't really, the proposal doesn't really meet all the aspects of the ordinance, and I think it should be denied.
And Mr. Tarnoff, that is why we are here, because it does not meet it.
I understand that.
And that was my point.
And
they get a fair hearing just like you all get a fair hearing.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michelle Kramer. I've been sworn in. I live in the Sherwood Forest neighborhood, and my parents live in the Red Oak neighborhood, and I travel past the site almost every day, and I'm very familiar with it. According to the city standards, the PDC shall not recommend if it will be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. Although the proposal has these estimated 122 semi-trucks daily, that's estimated, but we all think it's more, accessing the site from the northeast corner, air pollution goes wherever it wants. And the fine particulate matter released will be released into our neighborhoods, and it will be detrimental to the public's health. Long-term exposure to fine particulate matter is linked to many diseases, including but not limited to asthma, emphysema, other respiratory diseases, stroke, cancer, low birth weight, and dementia. Furthermore, just over the past few months, there have been weeks when air quality has been deemed unhealthy, and we've been told not to go outside. The additional air pollution from this project will further degrade air quality in the region, particularly for nearby residents who bear the brunt of this. Regarding the standards, this increase in harmful air pollution renders this proposal to not be in harmony with the appropriate orderly development of the zoning district. Regarding the standards, this special use will substantially diminish and impair the value of other properties in the neighborhood because unhealthy air quality affects everyone, young and old. with respect to the standards, increased traffic by the police station, which negatively impacts response time, endangers our safety. Because the proposal violates the city standards, I respectfully ask the PDC to reject it. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
I'm Tom Yatabe, Y-A-T-A-B-E. I've been sworn in. I'm in one of the 6 houses on Old Deerfield Road, and I've been there for 23 years. With all due respect to the gentleman with the traffic analysis, I don't believe you. You can't control it. You absolutely cannot. Tell me how you're going to stop trucks coming off of Deerfield Road onto Old Deerfield passing right in front of my house. My kids have to, I have 2 15-year-old twins, and they get on the bus right there. Noise-wise, I can hear trucks jake braking and the freight train from my house. This is a third of that distance. You're not going to stop it with the tree line. It's just not going to happen. That's it. Thanks.
Microphone number 1.
Before we start, neither of us were sworn in, so I don't know how we do that.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Are you testifying together or?
Oh, together, he'll go first.
All right, fine.
Hi, my name is Levi Havdallah on Virginia Road. I want to discuss about the issues with the fire department coming with the traffic. When the trucks are coming, if someone's having a heart attack and they need to get to their house quickly, the trucks could possibly be causing some traffic, which can delay the time of person getting medical attention. And I remember just July, air quality was also pretty bad, and that's what I got to say. And I want to give a huge round of applause to all of our staff members.
Thank you. Levi, very well done.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Michael Havdallah. The one thing that I didn't see addressed was from the police department, that they did not have any comments that was in the staff report, or maybe I missed it. What is the police department's thoughts on this project?
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, microphone number 2.
Eugene Goldfarb, G-O-L-D as in dog, F-A-R-B as in boy. I've been sworn in.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the city, doing a great job. I'd like to speak to the developer, even though I'm supposed to speak to the city.
No, you have to speak to us.
Well, I'm encouraging you to work with the developer. Developer has a right to get some return to developer's property, and I like the way you're focusing on what's appropriate, what goes on. I've done a lot of work with brownfield communities, usually with disadvantaged communities, and the last thing we do is bring in a developer. First, we ask the community what would be acceptable there, how to make it happen. We want to redevelop these brownfield properties. Solo company was a negative. We don't want something as negative. We want a positive for the community. I agree that the major issues are site contamination, traffic, and noise, but all we're getting is obfuscation, platitudes, and fantasy. We're not really getting, we don't even have a project description. How could you do an environmental impact without a project description? And we're making up stuff, and we're saying that truckers are going to take these routes when we know it's not going to happen. I have a few items that weren't mentioned. I'll say that landscaping is not going to provide any noise attenuation. It's not going to reduce the noise. I'll also say Highland Park's done a great job with affordable housing. But I'm wondering if the affordable housing units will be affected disproportionately by this development, which would be a violation of environmental justice. And I'm also questioning, we talk about resiliency more and more. We talk about stormwater, we talk about emergency response. We like to say we're a resilient community, Highland Park. Do we really want to do this that'll affect this important part of the city and the city facilities there? Thank you for
sir.
time.
Next.
Hello, my name is William Dixon, D-I-X-O-N.
And were you sworn?
I was.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say that I live on Grove Avenue, and my backyard is where my backyard ends, Solo Cup begins. So I'm right there. And I also want to say that I've lived there for 38 years, and I thought Solo Cup was a very good neighbor. They staggered their workers. The trains were a problem. I could definitely hear the trains, but they were a very good neighbor. They staggered the entrance and exiting onto Old Deerfield Road. I also want to say that, like everyone else, my castle is my home, and I have a small home in Highland Park, and it's very comfortable, and it's cozy, and it's pretty peaceful. And I think that's really the way that Highland Park, I think of it, should be. I certainly would like it to remain peaceful, and I think that we all have the right to live in peace. And if you allow this truck depot, or whatever they're going to call it, I think that the peace is going to be reduced, and we're going to be left with noise pollution, light pollution, pollution, congestion pollution. And I really don't think that that's a benefit to anybody. I was just wondering a little bit about the green policy in the city. And it certainly goes against the way that the direction is going. And I guess everybody else can fill in the blanks about that. I respect the developers. They're very, I'm going to say, professional and good salesmen. The thing is that I don't believe what you're selling. I think that your numbers are fugazi. I think you're making them up. I think you're pulling them out of a book, and they're not coming from reality. When the train tracks go down on the crossing where they're trying to tell you that they're going to be turning a tight left-hand turn into this place, when the train is coming there, or when the gates are down, it's not going to happen. It's not based in reality. Somebody handed me a card the other day and said Rotarians, they have a motto. Number 1, is it the truth? Number 2, is it fair to all concerned? Number 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Number 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And I say that these people cannot say yes to any of those questions.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Hi, my name is Lauren Russ, and I was sworn in. I really have 3 things that I didn't hear today that I'd love to see addressed. The first one is, on an ongoing basis, what are you going to do with all the trucks to determine how the fumes and affect our soil, and also any kind of runoff and how that will affect our environment once you're up and running? The second one is, have you done or will you do any assessment on the effect of local wildlife? And third, there are lots of third-party truckers who have programs that train inmates, former inmates, to be truck drivers. And if you are partnering with third parties and you are bringing in those types of organizations, you're subjecting our children. And with trafficking and assault at an all-time high, you are taking a chance. And I don't think any one of us wants to do that with any one of our children, let alone any one of us, and put us in that position. So I really think that you need to look at the overall residential impact it has on the people around you, because I am confident that if any of you have little girls or have grandchildren, you wouldn't want them to be impacted by former felons.
Thank you. All right. Hopefully, at this point, it is 10:27. So, before we, excuse me, why don't you wait and let us go through our meeting, and then you might get an answer to your question, okay? We're not done here yet. So I ask you to please be respectful of us. You've done a great job so far. We appreciate it. I will tell you that I appreciate all of the neighbors being here and sharing their experiences with us as well as the developer. So, a couple of things. First of all, is there any direction that we wish to give the developer before we leave today? And then secondly, Carl, I know we had talked about a date for the next hearing, but I don't think that date that we first talked about has value since we got through the public comment. So they're not going to have time to respond to anything.
That's correct.
So think about a date after we give them some direction. So a couple things that I heard that I want to see. I think you really got to look at scaling this development back from an intensity standpoint, because that has an impact on the traffic and some of the other environmental concerns that we've heard. I want to get a development that fits more in the context of the area, which means I want it scaled down height-wise, personally. I want you to take a look at the architecture of it and really try and take it a step beyond of what you're showing us. I think your traffic study has to be upgraded to look at a broader area as well as the impact of this traffic on bicycles. Bicyclists on the Skokie Trail there. I think that you need to bring us the various reports on noise and pollution. I think what you're going to find out is with the noise, you're going to have to look at some kind of physical barrier between you and the adjoining residences. I think I've already told you I want to see the view from the adjoining residences looking at this property in winter, and it would be really special if you did it from the second floor of the residence instead of on the ground floor, so that people can get an idea of what it is that they're looking at. I'm sorry. I think you're going to have to come back with some more information about how you truly meet the standards, and you're going to have to explain to us exactly who's going in here, not by name, but by type, because I think the lack of certainty here is something that we're all wrestling with. Call it fear of the unknown, but there's a lot of unknowns with this project, and I don't know that that's working to your benefit at this point. I think it wouldn't be a bad idea for you to come in with some kind of study from, I'm assuming, an appraiser as to what the impact on the surrounding properties is going to be from a property value standpoint if this is open and it is fully built out. That means 96 truck bays, I think, is what we were told, right? I don't want to hear any more about 48. I want to hear about the full plethora of what this could be, and I think we need information about queuing for those trucks. I think the safety concerns expressed not only by the commission but by the neighbors are extremely valid and need to be addressed as part of the next time you come before us. I think we need more information about wetland mitigation. What am I missing, group?
Trees?
Trees, yeah, well, trees, landscaping in general. I mean, I think, one of the things, I don't know how anybody else looks at these things, but I'll tell you, I ask myself, would I want to live next to this facility? And it's not this facility, it's any development that we see. And so I want to be sure, I think you heard from the neighbors, they want to be sure they don't see, hear, or smell this development, right? So whatever you can do to make it as close to a reality, I think pulling even further back from the properties wouldn't be a bad start. I think you got to look at realistically what the parking demand is, because I think those of us who are familiar with Richfield and the police situation know that it's, that 500 cars going in and out of there in a day are gonna cause traffic issues. What else?
Lighting, did we say?
Lighting, yes, we need a lighting plan. I need to know how it's controlled. I need to make sure that it is off at the appropriate times so that it's not shining on or, shining on the neighbors. I will tell you, I know that you could meet the foot candle requirements at the property line and people are still gonna see it. So the idea is the neighbors don't wanna see it. So how are you going to manage that? What else?
I'd like to say, I mentioned, want to see the NFR and what conditions are imposed by the IEPA and what continued monitoring, if any, that is, again, part of the conditions of the NFR, and what uses are permitted under the current NFR, and whether those are adequate for not only your use, but any other possible uses for this property. I don't think of anything else.
Was it a wastewater thing from 2013?
I think you need an updated, stormwater. You need a updated stormwater opinion letter, as was requested, and Mr. Needleman gave us a master class in stormwater, so I appreciate that. Anything else, Jackson? Got everything? If I've satisfied you, I think I've done okay. With that, what is the next date that we want to go to, Carl?
Chair, let me just make sure I confirm here.
Well, I'm going to. Let's ask the applicant, how long are you going to need to respond to all this? 2 months?
Yeah, so.
Wait, let him answer that. 2 months?
Yeah, 45 days, 60 days.
2 months. So we're looking at, today is the end of August, let's say we're looking at the first part of the end of October or the beginning of September. November, I'm sorry, misspoke. What do you think?
Well, the date that I looked at was the Tuesday, October 3rd.
Not enough time.
Not enough time, okay.
Well, we just keep it to the regular schedule.
Well, October 17th. October
good.
17th would be the.
They can come for my birthday.
And I'd recommend that meeting also be continued to the same location.
That's fine. And as of right now, we have nothing else on the agenda? Because that's a regularly scheduled meeting.
It is. I mean, the deadlines have not
So I would
approached
ask,
that, but staff will work with.
ask the staff kindly not to schedule anything else for that day. All right. So I'm looking for a motion to continue this hearing to October 17th at 7 o'clock at the Highland Park Country Club.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hecht.
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Moore. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I will now take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Before, make sure everybody knows notice.
Yeah, notice, I'm sorry, thank you. You will, unless you signed up with the city, and you can still do that by sending Carl Burhop right there, an email at kburhop@cityhpil.com. There will be no further notice on this. So it is up to all of you to watch the city's website and look for the agenda, which will be published. Undoubtedly, the packet will be out probably the Friday before, if not a little sooner, right?
Correct.
Did I get everything?
That is correct, Chair.
Yes, Director Fontaine, did I miss something?
I just want to say, so this would be the October 17th, October 17th in this room at 7 p.m.
Right.
Okay.
That's what I said.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Moore, second by Commissioner Hecht. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned.